All right. Welcome everyone to Pre-Law Day at UTA. I'm so excited. You have no idea. This is an event that we've hosted for a while now. And we were kind of worried that we wouldn't be able to do it. But, thanks to the magic and the power of Zoom and all these wonderful platforms, we're able to bring this event to you right in the comfort of your living rooms or wherever you are watching right now. So I'm so thankful that you took some time out of your day to do this and to visit with us. This meeting is going to be recorded just so that you all know. So feel free to ask any and all questions, and you can come back and watch it as many times as you like. So first and foremost, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Amber White. I'm the Director of Pre-Law and Legal Studies for the University of Texas at Arlington. I have been in this role for about 6 years now, and I could not be happier with the university and the center's growth. We have grown and come so far, as you'll get to hear later on from one of our distinguished alumni who's going to be speaking in our very, very next panel. But let me just give you an idea of how today's going to go. So first and foremost, we're going to have the welcome and just kind of introduction to UTA Pre-Law. I have a couple of wonderful co-panelists that are joining me. Ms. Nida Shah, who is a senior graduating with 2 degrees here in a couple months. And Miss Avani Soni, who's also joining us. She's also a senior and graduating. And the two of them are going to share a little bit about UTA Pre-Law, their experiences, and the student organizations that they work with. Next, we'll have a wonderful panel discussion conversation with one of our alumni, Miss Olivia Roberts, who is practicing out, and she was one of my students, so I'm very proud of her. She's going to tell you all about her experiences. At 10, we're going to have our law school in the time of COVID discussion. It's going to be our law school admissions panel. So if you've ever had any questions, concerns regarding what it's like to actually get into law school from the admissions side, as well as, what's been happening with COVID and everything that we've been going through, they're going to break all that down. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to jump over to the Ask Me Anything attorney breakouts. I'm going to explain this once more when we get to this portion of the program. But as I mentioned in the email that you were all sent, this is a breakout opportunity that has to happen in a separate Zoom. Zoom is great, but it doesn't allow us to have the webinar all in the same function. So we have to pop out of this webinar, go to a separate Zoom meeting, but we'll come right back here for our creative ways to use a law degree workshop, which is going to be incredibly special. We've got folks speaking about social media law, video gaming law. We've got some JAG folks that are coming to talk about what it's like to be a JAG attorney. So it's really an exciting day. I'm incredibly excited for you guys. And with that, we're going to jump into it. Okay, so I have this video that I'd like to show you. Let's see if it'll play properly. And if not, I'm just going to tell you about, oh, no, does it want to play? Technology. That's okay. The best laid plans. So I'm going to jump right in and just share with you a little bit about our program. So Pre-Law is a great place for anybody that is looking, and I say Pre-Law at UTA specifically, it's a great place for anybody that's looking to explore a career in law, that has questions, that is really unsure of what they want to do, or if you're sure of what you want to do. Either way, we help you get to where you want to go. There's several resources that we offer through our pre-law program. First and foremost, our advocacy program is one that is exceptional. We have 4 main things that we offer. We have moot court, mock trial, mediation, and arbitration. through COVID, we've kind of paused mediation and arbitration, but really hope to resume those when we rejoin society once again. But speaking on moot court first, what's an interesting tidbit is the University of Texas at Arlington is the birthplace of undergraduate moot court. It was started by a couple of professors here on campus and grew to a national program. So this is the place where college moot court was born. That's where you are competing as an appellate advocate in a simulated case, arguing before the Supreme Court. Mock trial is the other way to go, and our two lovely co-panelists here both did mock trial. They'll get to tell you a little bit about their personal experiences. Mock trial is fantastic. That's everything that you think of when you think of TB and being in court. It's an opportunity for you to really experience a simulated case, and it's a great opportunity for you to understand what it is to really practice law. You get to be in the driver's seat, and you get to examine the witnesses and yell, "I object," and all of that fun stuff. So our advocacy program is really fantastic because you get to experience a lot of things. All right. Next, we've got our mentorship program. You're going to get a taste of the mentorship experience when you participate in this afternoon's attorney mentor breakout session, because the attorneys at Haynes and Boone and AT&T work with our students to kind of give them a little guidance as far as what they can expect in law practice, a heads up on what they're doing in the application process. And many of our mentors develop great relationships with their mentees and go on to write recommendation letters for them for law school and beyond. Ms. Roberts, our first panelist of the day, she's going to be able to tell you all about her mentorship experience and her relationship with Mr. Errol. But mentorship is a fantastic experience. I don't have a slide for it. I talked about it in the video, but advising is also a big part of the experience here at UT Arlington. You will work closely with me. We work on your personal statements for law school. We do events. We do all kinds of things to kind of get you ready for the next step and beyond. We have a law and legal studies minor, so that's the academic leg of our program. So if you're interested in exploring what it is to actually take some classes, we have several course offerings that give students the chance to see some great classes and what it would be like once you get to law school. A couple of classes I mentioned here on the slides: constitutional law, business law, entertainment and media law, the great Anglo-American trials, and we do so many more. Mock trial and moot court are a part of that as well. So you really get some hands-on experience. I should have mentioned this earlier, but as you are listening, if you think of any questions, and you will, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A chat. Since this is a webinar, we aren't going to get anybody the chance to unmute themselves. Your chance to unmute yourself and ask questions out loud is going to come in that attorney mentor breakout session. But if you have any questions, we will certainly answer them as we go if you drop those into that Q&A, and you should see that at the bottom of your screen. Okay. Next, UTA is also home to the brand new, you can still smell the new stain on the wood there, the brand new Adelpha B. Callejo courtroom. It is a gorgeous place and is connected right to the Pre-Law Center. So you can come have a chat with me and then go and stand in the middle of the room and act like you're Johnny Cochran, or I don't know what this generation's superhero lawyer is, but that's my generation's superhero lawyer, Johnny Cochran. And we also have some really cool things that we do with the Pre-Law Center. So as you can see, we've taken students to Washington, D.C., we've taken students to New York. We've taken students to Vienna, Austria. We've gone all over the world with our students to do various activities. We take you to visit and tour law schools. At the bottom left, that's what we were doing. We were going to go visit law schools in the Houston area. We've gone to California. I mean, we really have been all over the place. UT Arlington has left a pretty big footprint all over the country. And the top two photos on the right and in the middle are photos of our pre-law achievers banquet. That's one of the, it's pre-law prom, you all. It's one of the best things that we do. Pre-law prom is virtual this year, but guess what? Mrs. White can make it fun. If you believe nothing else, Mrs. White can make anything fun. Okay, so we're gonna do our pre-law banquet this year online. We've done things like casino nights. This year's an escape room. So yeah, I'm excited about all the wonderful opportunities that we have and continue to do in our program. So, and again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to just stick those in the Q&A and we'll address those here shortly. So first, we have several student organizations that are a part of UT Arlington's pre-law program. We don't have anyone to speak on Model UN. We will resume those activities when we meet in person, but the two activities and the programs that have continued throughout COVID and have met virtually are Pre-Law Society and Women in Law. And Women in Law is our newest organization. But first, we want to talk about our longstanding organization, Pre-Law Society. And with that, I will turn it over to Nida, who is our Pre-Law Society president.
Thank you so much, Mrs. White. Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Nida, and I'm a senior double majoring in philosophy and criminal justice, and I'm also the president of UTA's Pre-Law Society. So I'm here to talk about and give you all more information on what Pre-Law Society is all about and how you can be a part of it. So we're basically a campus student-led organization, and we aim to provide resources and guidance to students who are interested in pursuing law and their career in law. So some of the resources that you can take advantage of being a member is, well, first we have, we host like a million events throughout the year, so you can be a part of those. Those events include like guest speaker series where we have current law school students come talk to us, or attorneys. We also have law school admission process workshops, but also just law school trips. We organize different law school trips throughout Texas, but also like outside of the state too. So some of the law schools that we toured in the past was SMU, Texas A&M, and like Mrs. White mentioned, we went to DC too, and we toured law schools there as well. Another thing that you can take advantage of is our LSAT study sessions. So basically the law school admissions test, or the LSAT, is a test that is very important in your law school admissions process, and we provide help with that. We host weekly LSAT study sessions with a tutor that you can take part in and learn from. Another thing is that we have a community. Being a part of Pre-Law Society, you will meet so many people, make so many friends, and those people are gonna help you in your own individual pre-law journey. Personally, some of my closest friends that I have now, I met them through the Pre-Law Society. Another thing I can talk about is mock trial, Model UN, and the mentorship program. I was a part of all of those. I definitely enjoy mock trial. I loved every bit of it. Mrs. White was my coach, and yeah, I definitely recommend that. If y'all have any questions about it, feel free to reach out. Model UN, I was a part of that too, and it was a really great experience for me. And lastly, mentorship. So I was also part of the Pre-Law Society's mentorship program, and the mentor that I have, he's such a brilliant guy. He has helped me with my own law school admissions process. So yeah, that's just a little bit about what the Pre-Law Society is all about, and what my individual experience has been being a UTA pre-law student. So I'm going to send my email in the chat if you have any questions about PLS, Model UN, mock trial, anything about mentorship. Please feel free to reach out to me. With that, I turn it over to Avani. Thank you.
Excellent. And I love that you have such a great relationship with your mentor. I love that. Well, so I have one question that's on the floor before we jump to Avani. When are the LSAT study sessions being offered, and how can someone sign up for that?
Yeah, so they're offered every week on Fridays. And a way to sign up for that is you can email me and I can send you the link for since it's virtual, I can just send you a link and you can log on to the chat.
Perfect. So if Nida, you wouldn't mind dropping your Q&A, your email in the chat for everyone. Feel free to take advantage. And then if you guys, she's gonna hate me for doing this, but if y'all have any other questions for Nida that don't get asked or answered in this tidbit here, feel free to shoot her another email. She's very responsive. So, and with that, we'll talk about Pre-Law's newest organization, Women in Law. And telling us all about that is our Women in Law president, Avani Soni.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here. So I am the president and one of the co-founders of Women in Law here at UTA. It's just under a year old, so we're a pretty new organization still. And so our main purpose with creating this organization here at UTA was in no way to compete with PLS or Pre-Law Society in any way. We wanted to have it more as a sister organization to Pre-Law Society, which was just, additional resources and a safe space for women who are interested in the legal field. So our purpose was to, empower, educate, and embrace females in the legal field, especially since, the legal field is so generally male dominated. So we wanted to have that, female empowerment going on. We wanted to just have a safe space for aspiring women, just more specific purpose and add to their experience. Some of the events we have with Women in Law is we have a speaker series that happens twice a semester where we have high achieving attorneys in the legal field come and talk about their own experiences with law school, of being a female in such a male dominated industry. And you can just have a Q&A, ask them questions and stuff like that. I also participated in mock trial 2 years. Miss White does an amazing job getting us ready for that every single year. It's always so much fun. So yeah, I can post my email in the chat as well if you guys have any questions about anything women in law or pre-law related. I can answer them.
I promise I didn't make them say any of these nice things. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions, please do take advantage of the Q&A. Nida and Avani are hanging around for a little bit and can answer questions briefly, and I'll be answering questions as well. But with that, let's just give you guys a sneak peek at some cool things that are coming up. The first big thing I'm excited to announce, this is the first time anybody's hearing this live, except for Miss Alicia, who knows everything. And you'll hear me refer to Miss Alicia. She's our administrative assistant in the Pre-Law Center, and she is just amazing and fabulous. And she's going to be in the background, so everything that you see that's working really well, she's working on. So we'll have to thank her later. But the inaugural UTA Advocacy Boot Camp is coming this summer. It is going to be a multi-day immersive experience. We do hope to have it live and in the courtroom, but we'll see. We're going to see what happens and what our university will allow. But either way, it's going to be multi-day. It's going to be an exciting way to gain some pretty cool experience, learn mock trial, learn moot court, get some early exposure before you get to work with the teams on campus. If you're interested in getting more information about that, take a moment, jot a quick email out to prelaw@uta.edu and just say, I'm interested in learning more about the boot camp, and you'll be on the email list to receive more updates. I'm going to mention this again later on in the day, but it is definitely going to be an exciting experience and not to be missed. So if there are no more questions, and I've been watching the Q&A, thank you guys for your questions in the Q&A. If there are no more questions, then I am going to turn it over to the lovely Avani Soni, who is going to work with us on our next panelist. She is a wonderful young lady, you all. She is very excited about doing this. Olivia Roberts, she's a proud 2015 graduate of the University of Texas at Arlington, where she graduated summa cum laude with her bachelor's degree in political science. And after graduating from UTA, she was accepted to the Washington University School of Law in St. Louis, among other exceptional institutions. She graduated with her law degree in 2019. And as a member of the Texas Bar, she is now an associate at Norton Rose Fulbright's Houston office, where she focuses on corporate mergers and acquisitions and securities. I am so proud of this young lady, you all. Please join me in giving a virtual welcome to Miss Olivia Roberts.
Good morning. How are you, Amber?
Good morning. Good morning. I just can't get over. She's just I taught her. She's so grown. I can't take it.
It's a long way.
Yes. Well, I will let you introduce yourself. Please share with everyone who you are, what you do, and how you got where you are.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Amber, for providing me with this opportunity to speak. My name is Olivia Roberts, and I am a second-year associate at Norton Rose Fulbright, where I practice mergers and acquisitions in Houston, Texas. And if you don't know what mergers and acquisitions means, that's completely fine. It's just basically buying and selling companies. And I also advise on when private companies want to sort of go public. So just sort of think about when you go buy stock for public companies, before private companies go public, there are certain requirements that they have to follow with the SEC in order to become public. So we at my firm advises on that, among a number of things. We are a global firm, so we have tons of practice groups. Let's see what else. I'm originally from Beaumont, Texas. And then as Amber mentioned, I went to the University of Texas at Arlington, and I graduated in 2015. And then I made the decision to move out of Texas and go to law school in St. Louis, Missouri. So hopefully that covered all of the questions that Amber asked.
This is Olivia Roberts. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the UTA Pre-Law program?
Absolutely. You know, honestly, I would not be where I am today without the pre-law program. I met my mentor through the program. Amber, I believe she came on the year that it was sort of time for me to be involved with the Pre-Law Center. And Amber did such an amazing job, whether it came to providing resources, or I actually received a scholarship through the Pre-Law Center to take an LSAT program. Being that I didn't have any attorneys in my family and I had limited resources, financial resources, the scholarship to do the LSAT prep course was critical in me preparing for the LSAT. So the Pre-Law Center has been nothing but generous to me, and it has been an amazing experience. I wouldn't be where I am today without my mentor, Arrow. We still stay in contact to this day, and I met him through the Pre-Law Center. So all positive comments from me when talking about UTA's Pre-Law Center.
Now, Ms. White, in her introduction of you, she said you got accepted to multiple schools. Can you just tell us how many schools you applied to in your application process?
Sure. So if I remember correctly, I probably applied to ballpark maybe around 12. I kind of see my admissions process as sort of 2 layers. The first layer, originally when I started applying, before I met my mentor while I was applying to law school. And because I didn't feel like my LSAT score was as strong as it should be to get into top school, I wasn't applying to them initially. And then I met my mentor, and then I started applying to a second set of schools. So I probably, in the first set was probably around 6. And then once I had the conversation with my mentor that, hey, Olivia, you look amazing on paper. You have great numbers. Your LSAT score is fine. You should apply to top schools. And then I applied to maybe 6 more schools. So I probably say 12. I tell people, apply to as many schools as you possibly can, even schools that you don't think that you will get into. Apply to Harvard, apply to Yale, apply to, sort of all the schools that are at the very, very top. Apply to WashU, and don't feel like you don't have the quote unquote numbers to get in, because you might have other valuable things that you can bring to the table and to the school. So I would just say, be open-minded and be confident when you are applying.
Now, earlier you mentioned talking about the LSAT and how you didn't think your score was that great, but overall, was the LSAT a challenge for you, and how did you manage that?
It was. So I took the LSAT twice, and I actually ended up getting the same score, even after the prep course, which it was an average score, so it wasn't bad, but I think it was a challenge because it teaches you a different type of skill that it wants you to bring, which is, my personal opinion is I don't know that I've used any of my skills that the LSAT requires as an attorney or even in law school. I guess they kind of want you to think critically, but you don't necessarily have to, the skills and sort of the perspective that the LSAT score is designed for you to bring, you don't necessarily bring that into law school, in my opinion. Some people may disagree with me, but I don't think we need the LSAT score.
So
I was just going to say, we do have one quick question that a student put out for Olivia, if we can have her address that really quickly. Was B-Law your first choice? And if not, what was? What made you choose that field? And then what was your experience like at law school in St. Louis coming off the heels of Ferguson? Those are 3 loaded questions, but they're all excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did choose to go. I came in knowing that I wanted to go to law school. I knew I wanted to go to law school when I was a senior in high school, and I've sort of always been of the mindset of what is it that I need to do to do this thing. And I didn't have any attorneys in my family, so I really relied on resources that were provided, i.e. the pre-law center. And speaking to Amber, I didn't even know what big law was until I went to law school. So yeah, I think that to answer that question, I always knew that I wanted to go to law school, even going into undergrad. And so I made sure I prepared myself. And I sort of talked to the people that were willing to talk to me and tell me what it is that I needed to do. I'm looking at the question. What made you choose the field? So initially, like everyone else, I thought that being an attorney was, I'm really good at arguing, so I can be an attorney. But in the type of law that I practice, which is considered transactional work, we don't argue. It's more of a collaborative process. And it's also why I chose transactions over disputes. And so I would say now I love being in the field because it allows me to solve issues and to analyze things and point out different issues that may arise. And I've always sort of loved the legal side of things. I grew up watching all the court shows and all of that stuff, and it's always been an interest of mine. So that's sort of why I've chosen the field, and I've decided to stay. And lastly, that's a really great question. I would say, so WashU is considered sort of like the privileged school of the city. And so I think that it kind of took me away from being able to really experience sort of the issues that were arising at the time post Ferguson. I will say that at WashU, we have a Black Law Students Association. BOLSA is the short name for it. And we did a lot of work with social justice and trying to contribute in a way that we could in a positive manner. I think that the city itself, and I'm just being honest, I'm sorry if anyone's from St. Louis on the call, I was not a fan. I think that St. Louis has a lot of work to do when it comes to progressing and integrating the citizens there. And it just sort of provided me with the assurance that I wanted to definitely be back in Texas. So I wouldn't say that my experience was necessarily terrible, but I don't think that I would ever live there again. Sorry, WashU.
So that last answer kind of ties into my next question for you, just more about your law school experience as a whole. So can you talk about some of your favorite and least favorite things about law school and WashU specifically?
So I think my favorite thing about WashU Law was the people that I got to meet and the relationships that I was able to build. They are still my friends to this day, and we still take time to sort of go and hang out with each other, even though we're all across the world. I think that once you get past your first year, you can really start to focus on what are the things that you're passionate about. So while I was at WashU, I was able to participate in a clinic, a children's rights clinic, where I was able to serve as a guardian ad litem, which essentially means an attorney for a kid. And that was a really great experience because it showed me, it showed me how many people need assistance and advocacy. And it has allowed me to want to do those things when it comes to pro bono work that my firm offers. So that was like one of my great experiences. Least great, not necessarily nothing with the school. Like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't a fan of the city. The school is an amazing school. It has great resources. It allowed me to have the job that I have today. And yeah, I don't know that I would say anything bad about WashU, not because I went there, but it really is a great school if you use the resources that are available to you.
And I wanted to kind of just go into a little bit more about Washington University specifically. Why did you end up choosing this school out of all the other schools you applied to?
Yeah, so the short answer is that they offered me the most money. But the way that I was connected to WashU was actually through my mentor, Errol, who I met through the mentorship program with the Pre-Law Center. And he, as I mentioned earlier, I sort of applied to schools first set versus second set. And the second set, my mentor sort of explained to me that, you know, although I wasn't super excited about my LSAT score, my undergrad GPA was a 3.9. So that still made me a very strong candidate in applying to law school. He had actually done the research, and he was the one who recommended WashU. At the time, it was ranked number 18. And he said, I know for sure that you can get into a top 20 school. So I applied to Notre Dame, WashU, Duke. Who else did I apply to? I applied to maybe 3 other schools that I can't remember. And then I was accepted into Notre Dame. Was super excited. My mentor and his wife invited me over for dinner, and we watched Rudy. And if you've never seen that movie, it's just basically about a Notre Dame football player. So we were all very excited. I was for sure thinking I was going to Notre Dame. And then WashU offered me $50,000 per year, which would essentially cover the entire tuition. So I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to WashU because I don't want a ton of debt. And that was a discussion that my mentor and I had early on about choosing schools, and being that they were so closely ranked together. It didn't really make a difference when it came to sort of looking for a job. So that's pretty much why I decided to choose WashU. I didn't visit it, showed up on day one, and yeah, I made it out.
So we do have some questions from the audience. One of them is, would you say it's possible to go to law school and work at the same time? Or would you suggest avoiding working in the first year of law school?
So I would absolutely avoid working throughout law school if you can. I believe some law schools actually don't allow you to work your first year. I don't know if that's true about WashU or not, but I would absolutely recommend against working during law school for sure.
And then we have another question. So based on your experience in law school, do you think that the age matters to join law school? And if not, did you meet people who are older than you while studying law?
No, I don't think age matters at all. Yeah, I had classmates from all over the spectrum when it came to age. And yes, I did actually. One of the people who was in my study groups, Randy, who I'm actually still friends with to this day, I believe he's like 40 something. And what made me want to really study with him was because prior to coming to law school, he was a teacher. And in my head, like, I thought he was a great person, but also it's perfect because literally his profession was to teach people material, and he was amazing at that. So if I didn't understand something, he did a really great job if no one in the group understood something, he did a really good job of explaining it and breaking it down. And so I would say I don't think that age matters at all.
And we had another question. Did you take a gap year at all in any point in your educational career?
I wouldn't consider it a gap year. So I actually graduated December of 2015, and law school doesn't start until August. So for 8 months, I went and worked for an auto finance company just to sort of be able to pay bills and everything like that. But so not necessarily, but I don't know if you would count it as a gap semester or not.
All right. So bringing us, you're here back in Texas. What made you decide to return to Texas to practice?
So my plan was always to return to Texas. I am someone who I'm a planner for sure. And I think that's something that's a great skill to have, sit down, write a plan, figure out what it is that you want to do long-term. I never even considered other cities, and so much so, in fact, my first year, I was only applying to Texas law firms when looking for a summer job. So some people may not know, but when you're in law school, you essentially have to find a job for the summer doing some type of legal work. And that is a very stressful situation. It's just one of the many stressful situations about law school. But I was applying to only law firms in Texas, which I do not recommend. I didn't get my job until really late. It was literally the last firm that was on my list of like 80 places. And I think that I would have had a much better experience if I had just applied nationally to everywhere, because where you work your first summer doesn't really matter, because wherever you work your second summer, if you work at a law firm, that's where they will offer you post-graduation. So that's, to answer your question, yes, I'd always planned to come back to Texas, but at the end of the day, things happen, opportunities come up. If I had gotten an opportunity to work, I don't know, at the time for Barack Obama, I probably would have went. So you just don't know.
We had a couple more questions. One of them is about law school. So how would you describe the atmosphere in law school aside from it being super competitive?
I'm sorry, I missed the front end of your question.
How would you describe the atmosphere at law school aside from it being competitive?
I think the first year, it is pretty competitive. I think it kind of reminds me of high school a little bit, in that there's not a lot of people put together, because my class was maybe 200 or so people. And so you become you become very familiar with each other, and you sort of learn about each other's personalities. So I would say it was fine. I sort of came into law school like, this is a business situation, so I just kind of want to get what I'm here for and then go back to Texas. But I definitely ended up establishing a lot of long-term relationships, and that's something I recommend. When you go to law school, use that time to network. You're networking, and they're going to tell you this. Your networking starts the first day of law school, and that networking is very important when it comes to your long-term career. And if you work for a firm and you become partner and you're trying to find work, sometimes that work will come from someone you went to law school with. So, I would say the atmosphere was, very positive. Everyone was very nice. So I don't have anything bad to say about it. I have always been a type of person that has separated sort of personal and like what I would recognize as like a business thing. So I would just say you can be either a social butterfly or you can be to yourself, and either is perfectly fine. So.
There's another question. So what advice would you give to someone who is really, really not comfortable with leaving home or going, outside of the area for law school? How would you reconcile their applying to other places? I guess what tips would you give to encourage them to apply to other places?
I would say, I personally think that you should apply to schools. Um, I hate saying this, but like you should apply to schools based on rank. And the reason I say that is because when it came to me trying to find a job, um, my firm doesn't even interview some candidates from certain ranked schools. And I feel like, some of those top schools are not going to be in Texas. Of course, we have UT, which is great. So you can, which I think they're ranked like number 14 or so. So I would say, if you don't feel comfortable leaving the state, and that's perfectly fine, maybe apply to UT. If you live in Houston, you can go to U of H. I think the downfall for me in moving out of Texas is that because there's so many Texas schools here in Texas, a lot of law firms in Texas do not necessarily go out the way to recruit from schools outside of Texas, other than, Harvard, Yale, those types of schools. So I would just say, it's absolutely a personal decision. I don't know how long we will be doing things virtually. So that may be a plus in that if you apply to, I don't know, a school in North Dakota and you get in, then maybe you would be doing your 3 years virtually anyway. So that would allow you to stay in your actual home. So, hopefully that's helpful. But I would just encourage you to, take the leap of faith and go out. When I moved to Missouri, I knew 0 people, and my parents, they drove me up, dropped me off, and said good luck, and that was it. So you learn to survive. And I think that it actually allowed me to sort of meet people from different walks of life. And that's a skill that you'll need in your professional career. So hopefully that encourages you to apply to everywhere.
So another question about law school. What is one study tip you felt was extremely beneficial for you in law school?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say, so one thing that I did actually did this during bar prep, was so typically when we study, you take breaks, or you'll find yourself on your cell phone or on Instagram or whatever. And one thing that I would do was I would write down my time. So if I started at 8 a.m., so when I was studying for the bar, I would study from like 8 a.m. until like 7 p.m., which is ridiculous, but that's what you have to do to pass the bar exam. But anyway, I digress. So I would write down my time. So if I started at 8 a.m., but then if I would stop and I would pick up my cell phone, or if I would go on Facebook, I would literally write down, okay, I stopped at 8:07. And then at the end of the day, I would count up how long I actually studied for, because even though I'm sitting there for like 5 hours, I saw that I was actually only really studying for 3 hours. So that really encouraged me to put down my cell phone, focus on the material. The other tip that I would say is find a study group. It's so important to try to find some people that you mesh well with, who will study effectively. If you find yourself in a study group where, you're not really studying, you're just kind of lollygagging, I would say find another study group, because first year exams are the worst, just because you don't know how long you're supposed to study. So you're gonna study like 3 weeks out or a month out, and then you're gonna be exhausted by the end. And so I think for me, when I went into my second year, my grades became much better, or my second semester, because I learned that, look, I can learn all the information, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I can break out what I need to study for based on when the exam is, and I can kind of learn everything. And I wasn't used to that, because when I was in undergrad, I studied, throughout the semester, because you have different exams throughout the semester. So you're forced to learn as you go. Whereas in law school, it's kind of weird to say, but you don't really have to start studying until like 3 weeks before, because it's just, it won't make sense until then, because you'll learn, especially your first semester, you won't know what is going on throughout the semester until the very end, where you're like, okay, I just learned all the elements of what negligence is. So now I can apply it and practice and study it that way. So those are sort of my tips that come to mind, that I would sort of recommend.
So we have one question about the bar, actually. So the question is, would you suggest to take a break for a few months to prepare for your bar license, or just go straight through from law school?
So I think I'm trying to remember, even though this was like yesterday. So the bar exam was in August. I graduated in May. So I started studying like probably almost immediately after graduation, just because I'm that crazy person that just feels like I need to do this now, because I'm super anxious about it. So I think I started studying maybe in like the first week of June or so. I could be wrong or off, but I think it was a total of like, I think you're supposed to study for 10 weeks, and I studied for like 11 or 12. And so, maybe take a couple weeks off, but I was so paranoid about making sure I passed on the first time, which I did. I would say, start studying as soon as you can. And I know that Barbary, which is the company that I use, they actually give you some sort of pre-bar materials that you can start studying with prior to doing the actual course. So you can kind of use that too, if you like. It just kind of depends on how you feel like you best prepare for really tough exams, I would say.
Okay. We have a pretty general question. What advice would you give to someone doing this law school application journey alone?
I would say use the resources that you have. That was sort of my situation coming in. Go talk to Amber. She was very much, she gave me real practical advice, but she also gave me emotional advice. When I would go into her office and I would say, I don't think I'm going to get into law school. I don't think I can do this. I don't have any attorneys in my family. She would be like, you will be fine. Like, there are many people that have walked in your shoes, has gone through the same journey. And I would say use the people around you because they know more. And if you're willing to learn and take advice, talk to as many attorneys as you can, participate in the mentorship program. I will say, I think the difference between, the success of me, my mentor and I's relationship versus other people who may not have sort of stayed in contact is that you have to put your energy into it because you're the one who needs the help. And if, a mentor, if they see that, hey, this person is really interested in figuring this out, they will go the extra mile to provide you with the resources and advice. But you have to also do the work on your end. I know sometimes people may be introverted and shy, but you have to put yourself out there. You have to, even if that means, once a month, emailing your mentor and saying, hey, can we hop on a Zoom call? I know we're virtual right now, so that we can sort of discuss what it is that I should be doing now, because they've gone through the journey, they've gone through the process. They know the ins and outs of it. And, if you don't have any attorneys in your family, or if you have no idea what big law means, these are things that you can sort of learn by talking to people who are in the legal industry. And I only say big law because that's what I do. But even if you're interested in doing government work or public interest work, you can find, Google is very innovative. You can, find people who do the exact thing that you are interested in doing, or maybe interested in doing, because you might find, oh, that's boring, or that's not really what I thought it was. So I would just say, you're not alone as long as you are willing to put yourself out there and receive the resources that are made available to you.
So we had one other question. Could you estimate how much reading a week you did in law school?
So you said the question is, was it per week or?
Per week, yeah.
Oh, that's tough. So your first semester, you will read a lot. Like, I would say per night, I was reading probably like 90 pages. But the great thing about it is that as you go along, you will find that you don't even really have to read all 90 pages to get to the point of what it is that you need to learn for class or for the exam. So, when I was first reading cases, I would literally read every single word and write down every single note. And that takes a really long time to brief for a case. Luckily now, Lexis, it's a program that's out there, does the briefing for you, which I didn't have as a tool, and I'm really jealous about it. But all you need to know is the facts of the case, the issue that the case is bringing, and the rule that it is that you need to figure out, and maybe the reasoning, so that you can add that on your exam. So I would say in the beginning, it's a lot of reading, but as you progress and you realize like, oh, I actually don't need to read this entire thing, then it becomes much easier.
And then last question before we finish this panel, what kind of hands-on learning experiences did Washington University offer, and what were they like?
So I would say things like mock interviews. We had a career center, so they would offer you to sort of practice interviewing, which is, if you're whatever law school that you go to, if they offer that, take advantage of that. I was someone who felt like, oh, I get every job I apply to, so this is going to be easy for me to find a summer job. And you will get a lot of rejection letters when you apply to jobs your first summer, and that's okay. We all get them. I'm sure maybe some of the attorneys, if any have joined the call, they'll tell you the same thing. But I will say interviewing for a firm is completely different than like any other job, because it's not really a structured interview. You just sort of talk. They want to know, are you likable? Is this person someone that I could be stuck with on a case at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm not going to be super annoyed? And so I would just say, take advantage of those mock interviews. Something else that they did is they would host a lot of career fairs, and that gave us the opportunity to be face-to-face with different law firms and public interest organizations. And it just sort of gave us another way to network. They offered a ton of different social organizations. So I was in BOLSA. I was also the social chair of Women of Color Law Society. And so I would just say, be involved. Trying to think if there's any other hands-on experience that comes to mind. We also did a lot of, not a lot, but your first year, we were required to do like oral arguments and stuff like that. So you do get a lot of hands-on experience. Your second year, you'll have the opportunity to participate in clinics. So we have a ton of different clinics. I actually started the Innocence Project clinic at WashU, and that's something that you can do. There's the Children's Rights Clinic, which is another clinic I participated in. There's immigration law. So your second year is really when you get the hands-on experience, because you get to go to hearings, participate in hearings. And so, yeah, and I'm not saying that WashU is the only school that offers this. I'm sure all law schools do, but that's just what comes to mind when I specifically talk about WashU.
Thank you so much, Olivia.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. You've offered such wonderful insights. Oh my goodness. And you were, as you were recounting that journey, I remember that conversation. What should I do, Mrs. White? Notre Dame, or I don't know. It was, I just remember it. I was literally reliving it as you were telling it.
Yeah.
Let me just say, guys, the advice and information that Olivia has imparted has been candid and has been so spot on. You will be so much better for this next step after hearing all the information she shared. I do see that there are other questions. If Olivia has 5 seconds to hang out and maybe address that in the chat, she can address those questions for you. But we're gonna have to say goodbye to her for now. But thank you so much, Olivia. Thank you, Avani. I think this has been a pretty powerful panel, and I love that the students were so engaged and asking all those great questions. That was fantastic.
Thanks for having me, Amber.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you so much.
Come back anytime. All right. So with that, it looks like we're almost right on time for our next panel presentation. I am so very excited that we get the opportunity to meet with law schools in this pandemic time. Again, thank you, technology. With us here today for our very next panel are several of my friends from various law schools around the country. I'm so thankful, and new friends as well. I'm so thankful that I've gotten a chance to have these folks join us for today. Our lovely co-panelist Nida Shah is back to help us moderate this panel, and she's going to be introducing our wonderful law school guests and helping to facilitate this discussion. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm just going to verify that you're able to unmute yourselves before I perfect. All right, you all, thank you so much for being here. And with that, I'm only going to pop on if I see a student question or two.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. White. I am Nida Shah, and welcome to the Law School in the Time of COVID and Beyond admissions panel. So just before I start this panel, I want to briefly mention that if y'all have any questions throughout the panel, please feel free to send them on to the Q&A chat, and I'll try my best to get that answered for you. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speakers for today. First, we have Ms. Erin Hall, the Assistant Director of Admissions at George Mason University, Antonin Scalia Law School. Second, we have Ms. Heather Stovall, the Associate Director of Admissions at Southern Methodist University, Dedman School of Law. Third, we have Mr. Dave Farnum, the Associate Director of Student Recruitment at the University of Texas at Austin School of Law. And finally, we have Ms. Megan Henson, Senior Associate Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at the University of Tulsa College of Law. So big welcome and thank you to all of our guest speakers for joining us today. And with that, I yield the floor to Ms. Erin Hall.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you for having us today. I'm excited to, get to connect with some more students because it is hard during the COVID era. So I guess I have roughly, 5-10 minutes to chat with you guys. I have some basic things I'm going to talk about, but I'd also say if students have specific Mason questions, please feel free to jump in and ask those in the chat now. So I thought I would start with talking about why I choose to work at Scalia Law School, why this is the school that I chose and why I think it's a really good fit for a lot of students. And that's a combination of our size and our location. So we are a public university in Virginia, but we very much claim Washington, D.C. We're located in Arlington, Virginia, not to be confused with Arlington, Texas, but we are just over the river from Washington, D.C. So while our students are technically, some of them are in-state residents, some, they generally live in Virginia, but a lot of them can live in DC, even some will live in Maryland. We are very much within that capital city. So it's maybe 3 metro stops, which is our version of the subway. I come from an area that's not used to public transit, but the city does love public transit. And so it really is a quick, hop, skip, and a jump into DC. And I love that for a law school. It means that our students have opportunities to go into the city really easily. Whether it be if you're interested in government, obviously, we have Capitol Hill externship programs. We have programs where students are working on cases that are going to the Supreme Court. We have students working at different government agencies, that kind of thing. Or if not interested in government work, everybody else comes to DC because the government's there. So there's major law firms in DC. There's, major nonprofit and all of those kinds of things that a lot of students are looking for, especially as law students. And because we're in, right next to DC, we get to be here. So that's something that I very much think is important for our school. And the combination of that was our size. So I said, hey, we're just outside of Washington, DC. We have all of these opportunities, but the law school itself is fairly small. We have generally an incoming class is between 140 and 150. So it's pretty small. Our small sections are about 40 students, so roughly, depending, there's always a little bit of adjustment, but roughly 40 students in each class during your first year. And that means you get to know your classmates. Your professors recognize you. Career services knows students in the hallway. And all of those things for me are really important. And they're why I chose to work at this law school, is that you do get that community feel. You do get those friendships with your classmates, those study groups, we have student groups that are not even involved with the law. We have a student group that's running along the Potomac. All they do is go running along the Potomac River. That's the entire student group. And I think that's important on top of going to law school and doing all of the major things like the externships and the classes and the readings, having a community of, students, faculty, staff is really wonderful. So you have that small knit community, then you step outside and you're in DC. So I thought it would be fun to start with that. And so that's kind of a big part of it. For just a little bit of general background, we are, a fairly competitive school. To come to Scalia Law School, the LSAT average is a 164 and the GPA is a 3.7. So, it is a competitive school, but we really are holistic and we're looking for applicants from all different backgrounds and interests and that kind of thing. And then as far as what we're sort of known for, we're definitely known for our centers. So the law school has a number of centers that are focused on different areas of law where our professors are really, really involved. So we're very well known for law and economics, very well known for national security. Makes sense being right next that the Pentagon is in Arlington, Virginia. So national security is a big focus for us. Intellectual property is another one. We actually have 8 different centers that are focusing on different areas of law that students tend to get really involved in. And then we have 9 clinics and 4 different externship programs on top of students just finding their own externships in the area. So there's a lot of different ways that students get involved. I'm trying to keep an eye on time, so I'm speeding through these, but feel free to ask questions and that kind of thing. I was told that there might be some frequently asked questions, and so I have a couple of those I figure I'll kind of close out with. First of all, I heard that a lot of students are asking about the GRE. We do accept the GRE. Welcome to apply with the GRE. And a lot of students ask, well, which one's better? We don't have a preference. I always tell students, think about, take a look at what type of tests. There are two very different types of tests. So maybe do a practice test in each and see which one is better for you. Which one do you think you'll do better on? That would be a great one to choose for applying to us, at least. You can do either or. I heard that scholarships are important. Not surprised. We do a lot of scholarships. They are merit-based, and students are automatically considered. If they're admitted, we automatically consider you for a scholarship. Last year's incoming class, so the students who started in fall 2020, it was 89% of them had some sort of merit-based scholarship coming in. So it's a big group of students that came in, and 89% had a scholarship. So that's kind of awesome. And then the other thing that I hear students have a lot of questions about is visiting campus, which is always hard right now. We do have a virtual tour up on the website that you can watch. And then right now for the spring semester, our focus is getting admitted students access to the school. So if you apply and you're admitted, we are offering individual, socially distanced tours of campus. So that's a really great option. And then we also are, assigning admitted students to get phone calls from our current students. So if you're admitted, you're going to get a phone call from one of our current students, even if you don't sign up. You're going to hear from them and get an email from them. They love chatting with you, so you'll hear from them. And then the other piece, and this is for if you're maybe you're a freshman, you're just starting to think about law school, all the way through if you've already applied, you can always email us. We want to talk to students. We're always happy to have, admissions counselors can schedule phone calls with you and that kind of thing. So we're trying to be as accessible as possible, even if it's very hard to come to campus right now. So I believe that's my 10 minutes, and I will kind of close out.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Erin. If anybody has a question for Ms. Erin, please feel free to send them on to the Q&A chat. Just kind of like a question for you, Ms. Erin, I have is that how has COVID impacted admissions in general? I know you mentioned about law school tours is just limited to admitted students, but overall, how has that been?
Yeah, I think that not getting to talk to students face-to-face has been the weirdest thing for all of us in the admissions world. We tend to be people who really enjoy, human interaction. We like chatting with all of you. So I think that's been the biggest difference is getting used to Zoom, getting used to having conversations in different ways, and trying to figure out, new ways to interact. So we're doing admitted student virtual events. Usually we would have had everyone on campus by now and welcomed them, and instead, we did an event last night, and we'll be doing another one next week and that kind of thing. From a review, like just admissions standpoint, I think a big thing is just different types of applications. A lot of students, their applications talk about their experiences during COVID, which makes sense because this has been a life-changing time for everyone. So we're seeing those essays more often. And I think that's good. If that's been a big impact on you, that's something we want to hear about. So I think that's the other big change is we're hearing about it.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Erin. If you'd like to put in your email so the students can ask the questions directly to you in the chat, that will be great. But thank you for taking the time out. Thank you so much. So next we have Ms. Heather Stovall from SMU Dedman School of Law coming in and talking to us about what SMU is all about.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I'll echo what Erin said. We are people persons, whatever that terminology correctly is. So we normally like seeing you all in person. So hopefully by next year we will be back on your campus. I always enjoy getting to come and speak with Amber and her students. It's a great opportunity. But so I'm not too far from you all. I'm located in Dallas, Texas. So about 5 to 10 minutes outside of downtown Dallas. We are a private university. And just to kind of talk about some of the same things I think that Erin touched on as well. We do have scholarships for most incoming students, more than 90% of our class last year received one of our Dean scholarships. So those are merit-based scholarships. You're automatically considered for those if you are admitted. They range from a third of tuition up to full tuition. Most of our students end up falling somewhere about half tuition and fees, or half tuition for those scholarships. There are also private scholarships that a student can apply for that are specific to SMU law students. And I'll drop some of these links in the chat too. I know it's hard to sit and try to like write down all these scholarship names. So I see some of my colleagues nodding. I'm sure all of us have links that we can share with you. We also accept the GRE. I always add a little bit of a caveat though. If you take the GRE and the LSAT, your application will only be considered using your LSAT score. That is a American Bar Association requirement of us for the law school. So that's something I always make sure to tell students. You know, Erin had great advice. If you do some practice tests and you decide that the GRE is more up your alley as far as how you test, just make sure that all of the law schools that you're applying to accept the GRE. Otherwise, if you're taking both the GRE and the LSAT, just know that even the schools that accept the GRE are going to review your application using your LSAT score instead of your GRE score. And I think one of the other questions that I've seen that's kind of been commonly asked so far on all the panels that I've been on is about the LSAT Flex. So for us, we have considered at SMU the LSAT Flex the same as the LSAT. And I see my other 3 colleagues nodding. So I'm thinking that means the same for all 4 of us. So maybe we can knock that question out now. So for us, the LSAT Flex is the same as the LSAT. You know, we're not differentiating those tests at all. That's the test that students are being offered. So that is what we are accepting and considering as part of the application. So I think those were the things that Erin talked about that were frequently asked questions too. I was trying to knock those out since I think we're all probably going to be asked those questions. So a little bit more about SMU. Like I said, we're right outside of downtown Dallas. As I mentioned, we are a private university. Some of the things that we get asked commonly about, we do have 10 different clinics. And I'm happy to drop information in the chat about those, but they range from things like the Innocence Project to criminal defense, to patent work, to small business clinics, civil clinics. We've got lots of different ranges that our students are interested in for the clinics. We've got 3 different externship programs. The one that I think that we're pretty well known for is our corporate counsel externship program. So that thankfully is something that we can offer to our students. Even during COVID, our students have had placements through the externship programs and the clinics through Zoom and things like this. So they're unfortunately not able to go into the courtrooms like they normally are, but they're still able to participate virtually as well. And then, Erin also spoke about tours. So we are also offering in-person tours, very similar to what she mentioned, though. Our tours are kind of limited if you're not one of our admitted students. We are scheduling prospective student tours, but I think it's only about 1 a day. So those are a bit more difficult to get. I'm happy to, I will share that link as well if you'd like to see if there are any dates available. If there are not, and you are not applying or admitted for the fall, then definitely make sure you're checking back like through the summer and then next fall. And even if you can't schedule a tour right now, one of the things that I encourage students to do, you can view one of our first year classes live. So that's a great way too to still get a little bit of kind of a feel of what the students and like professor interaction and things like that are, even if you're unable to come visit in person with us right now. And then just a little bit, I realized I was trying to like hit all of the questions that Erin spoke about because I thought that was so great. But so I am a 2014 graduate of the law school. I practiced for 3 years. I've been back going on 3 years this May. So I had a great experience. We still encourage a very supportive and encouraging class. So even with things over Zoom, we still are making sure that our students have access to like student groups and different events going on. We've got we don't have a running club, Erin, but we do have a walking club that just started up. So that's new. Our students, some of the students are doing like a run through Dallas tomorrow and ending at one of the locations that our students like to go to conveniently for happy hour. So like there's still things going on that we encourage our students to participate in and make sure that they're getting involved even through the COVID pandemic as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Heather. A question that popped up in the chat was about the LSAT and GPA requirement and some of the other requirements that a candidate should be mindful of when applying to SMU law.
Yeah, so we do not have an LSAT or a GPA requirement. I can share medians. Our medians for our incoming class of last fall, our LSAT was a 162 and our median GPA was a 3.73. Of course, that can change yearly. You know, so I encourage students, if you're not applying for this upcoming fall semester, to make sure you're checking that. One of the things too that I also encourage students to always look at, when I was going through the process, I had no idea what this was. So I always try to bring this up when I'm on a panel or speaking to students. Look up 509 reports. For every law school, I see all the nodding. Yep. For every law school that you're interested in applying. So it's actually, we called them 509, but they're 509. So you can go on Google and type in 509 report for SMU law or Scalia law, Tulsa College of Law, and Texas law. So you can look all of that up for all of our law schools, for any law school. And that will give you median LSATs, median GPAs, but it's also going to give you 25th percentiles, 75th percentiles for all of those as well. It'll give you a lot more information about all of our incoming classes. So I think those are great resources to check out too.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That is a great resource. I know I used it too, the 509 report. And yeah, I would encourage people to look into that too while applying. But thank you so much, Ms. Heather. If you can send your email on the chat, that would be great so people can ask you questions directly. But with that, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Dave Farnum from UT Law.
Hi, everybody, and it's great to see my cousin to the north, Heather, at SMU. The University of Texas School of Law is located in Austin, Texas, about 3 hours south of Dallas. And I have to say, I've been on the SMU campus many times, and it is a beautiful campus, and it's a lovely city to visit. So I look forward to getting back to visit your campus whenever we are allowed to travel. The University of Texas School of Law in Austin, Texas. Our law school is located on the main campus of the flagship university of the state of Texas. We were founded in 1883. We are one of the older law schools in the country. We were founded when the university was founded. We're known to be about a mid-sized law school, so we have incoming classes around 300 students per class. So that makes us a mid-sized law school. There are certainly schools that are larger than ours and schools that are smaller than ours. And yes, we are on the main campus of Austin. In Austin, it's an urban campus, and yet the campus is surrounded on 3 sides by residential neighborhoods. So it doesn't feel like you're immersed deep in a city because we are surrounded by a lot of residential neighborhoods. Austin is the capital city of the state of Texas. And so the state capitol is just 6 blocks south of the law school, surrounded by all the state agency buildings, surrounded by courthouses, state and federal courthouses. Austin is also known as the live music capital of the world, so there's a lot going on in the city of Austin. It's also a tech hub. After Silicon Valley, I think we're probably one of the largest tech communities, with a lot of national and international tech companies locating themselves in Austin. Seat of state government. College town, the University of Texas has 52,000 students and 23,000 faculty and staff. So it's a large university, and we are on the northeast corner of the UT campus. Let's get to a few numbers here. Technologically, can I share my screen? That's a good question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
You would think after a year, I'd be able to master Zoom. So can you see my screen here? Is that seeable? Good.
Yes, yes, it's perfect.
So some quick facts, and this reflects the class of 2020. So our 1L class, our median LSAT was 168. Our median GPA is 3.76. 48% of our class are women. 33% of this class are identified as minorities. Our 1L class represents the residency of 31 states. However, 65% of our enrolled students by law have to be Texas residents. So we are unapologetically, first and foremost, a law school for Texans in the state of Texas. And yet so about 2/3 of our class will always be from Texas, but 1/3 will be from other states. And so 31 states represented. And that 1L class is represented by about 114 undergraduate institutions. So our students come from colleges and universities all over the country and beyond. Of our entering class of our 1L class, 11% of them had graduate degrees, whether they be masters or doctorates or professional degrees. 8% of that class were over the age of 30. However, our average age for some time now has been 24, almost 25. If you look back over some years, about 60% of our students tend to come to our first year of law having done something after undergrad. About 40% of our students come directly from undergrad. We don't have a particular preference. We just say, we want you to go to law school when you think it's the right time for you to go to law school. We don't have a huge preference, but it's been averaging about 60-40, 40% coming right from undergrad. 35, as I've said, 35% of our students are not residents of Texas, and 18% of this 1L class were first-gen students. All right, a few more facts about Texas law. We do have 15 clinics. Those are academic classes, clinics, but you're working with real life people in real life legal situations. We have 15 of those. We have 8 internship programs, whether they be government internship, judicial internship, legislative internship. Because the state legislature is just blocks away from our school, a lot of our students like to work at the Capitol for the governor, lieutenant governor, representatives, senators, state agencies, nonprofit internships, prosecution, U.S. attorney internships. We have a lot of those. We have 12 centers and programs available, and 11 student journals. So journals can be very popular with our students to work. And we do have a study abroad program. Not every law school in the country does study abroad, but we have 33 different programs in 19 countries around the world. It seems about 20% of our 3Ls will do a semester abroad. So that's something robust and something that our students like to do. Let's see. Yes, one other thing. I'd say that we're a good all-purpose law school. We can cover anything from A to Z when it comes to legal interest, but there are a few things that people seek us out for. One is we have such a strong faculty in energy law and environmental law. So a lot of our students will seek us out for that faculty and for those experiential learning opportunities here in the state of Texas. Another category would be immigration and human rights. Again, we have very strong faculty, very many experiential opportunities for working in immigration and human rights. And a third area, as Erin mentioned, was intellectual property, patent law. I think that's a big thing in the future of legal employment. And because there is such a tech presence in Texas and in Austin, we've got some solid faculty and opportunities to do internships in intellectual property and patent law. But other than that, we welcome you. We can't welcome you in person. We follow the rules of the University of Texas. We do not have any possibility for in-person tours at this moment. So it's all pretty much virtual until we get the green light from the president of the university. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, fingers crossed, more people will get vaccines, more people will be traveling. So we look forward to welcoming you as soon as we possibly can to our campus. But in the meantime, I'll put a few links in the chat for you to be able to explore a little bit more about UT virtually. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Farnum. A question that popped up in the chat was the applicants who have lower GPAs but have high LSAT scores.
Sure.
What do you consider?
I'd say that a majority of the applicants, at least to our school, would what we call splitters. So they might have one number above our median, one number below our median, and that's the majority of applicants. So I'd say, as all of my colleagues would, the holistic review of the application is essential. Yes, we're going to consider your LSAT score. Yes, we're going to consider your GPA. We do have a minimum GPA of 2.2 when you apply to us. So please have a GPA above a 2.2. But beyond that, your personal statement is going to be important. Your resume is going to be important. Your reference and recommendation letters are going to be important. All of your transcripts from all of your college courses are important. So we really will, we're not looking for robots, we're looking for human beings. So, is the LSAT more important than the GPA or the GPA more important? No, they're all going to be considered. And we want you, the applicant, to submit your strongest application possible, put your best foot forward possible, tell us who you are, because we want to form a community of people that are going to contribute to one another's successes, are going to participate in the life of our community. So we want personalities, we want experiences, we want people that have done things with their lives. So show us the complexity of yourself. Yes, GPA, yes, LSAT, but we want to go way beyond that in the review of the application.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So for the working professionals, do you have like a separate program? Some schools offer 4-year programs versus 3, and some have weekend JD programs. This is kind of like a question to all of the panelists here. So if you can briefly mention that as well.
And we do not. We are a traditional law school, a 3-year full-time law school. We don't have a part-time program or classes for nights and weekends. So unfortunately, we can only offer the traditional full-time 3-year JD degree.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Farnum. If you could send your email in the chat, that would be great. I would like to hand it over to Miss Megan Henson now from University of Tulsa College of Law.
Hi, I'm so glad to see here and see some of my colleagues. It's been so long not being on the road recruiting, and I'm always sitting next to Dave because we're the T schools. So I'm used to seeing him multiple times a year. So this is nice. Being the former litigator that I am, I do have a short PowerPoint, because if not, I would be talking for probably the rest of our time. So I am going to share my screen here so you all can learn a little bit about TU. If I can move my page here. Hold please. Leave it to me. We're going to do it this way so you can see, because my little space bar change was not working. So, few facts about TU is we are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so we are about 4 hours north of Dallas. It is a quick drive up the turnpike to get here. We are a small community, also similar to what Aaron was talking about there at Scalia. We have approximately 335 students total. We do have 3 STAR options at the University of Tulsa. So we are bringing students in January, in July, and in August. So the spring and the summer starts are smaller programs. Normally they will have, anywhere from 15 to 25 students in those, and then the remainder will join in the fall. We have a 9.3 to 1 student faculty ratio. One of our great highlights is our very affordable tuition for a private school. So our tuition for this current year, the 2021-2022, is $26,880 for the year. And so this has been recognized as one of the lower private law school tuitions in the country. It makes us very competitive with state school tuition in just about any state. And of course, there's no in-state and out-of-state tuition difference for us. 95% of our last entering class did receive scholarship. I think that's something that most of us have talked about. Our scholarships are merit-based, and the average is going to be 10 to 12,000 any given year, just depending on our applicant pool. So a wonderful note here is that 40 to 50% of our entering class is from outside of Oklahoma, and that is normally high 40s. I think that our lower tuition is appealing to out-of-state individuals, and so Texas is our second largest group every year to come up and to return back for placement. Our third largest placement from our students who come here is usually kind of split. It'll rotate each year. I've been doing this 10 years between Colorado, the Virginia, DC area, and Missouri. So some quick little facts there. A few highlights for some of our recognition is being recognized year after year as the best value institution, and a lot of that is the lower tuition coupled with some strong outcomes. So this will give you a highlight to some of those. As others have talked about, we do have legal clinics on campus, and at TU we have a very big emphasis on going out in the field and earning hands-on practical skills training. I always tell my students, it is great to come to law school and learn to think like a lawyer. That's what you're going to do in that class when you're having all these theoretical conversations. But what happens when you leave the law building? There are other skills you need to have. And I see all of my colleagues nodding, and that is why the internships, the externships, the legal clinics, these are such phenomenal opportunities for our students to go out and see the practice of law, to see how different areas of law will differ. You may really enjoy one law class and the subject matter, but you go to practice in that field and say, that's not for me. You may think you want to work in a certain type of firm environment, but then you get an internship and think maybe that's not what I'm looking for. And so it's so important for all of our students to go out and have really valuable experience so that they learn more about themselves and what they want to do. We joke here and say it takes a village to raise a law student, because they come in so often not knowing exactly what area of law they want to practice, or they have an idea, but that changes first year and they're sort of thrown for a loop, and that's okay, because you have time over these 3 years to really explore legal practice, to learn about different areas of law, and to gain experience and to become a professional. So law school is such a journey. I really enjoyed my time in law school, and we hope that all of our students do too. But I did want to highlight some of those opportunities. First being our legal clinics. We do have 6 opportunities for legal clinics. And again, we are a smaller law program. Our last entering class was 126 students, and that was split between spring, summer, and fall. So our students are really at sort of different stages in their legal education. So the opportunities for externships and legal clinics are really abundant at TU, and all students who have an interest really have the opportunity to participate. So we have an immigrants' rights project legal clinic, a solo practice clinic, civil law clinic that currently has been working in Tulsa County. We actually have an eviction court, and so they've been partnering to represent individuals facing eviction. This is going to be a very important issue here in the next probably 9 months to a year. So they're doing some amazing work. Of course, that can be very broad when you think about civil law, what that can cover. We are just trying to focus our efforts on the biggest need for the community at any given time. So that's what's happening currently in that legal clinic. We have a public defender clinic, a community advocacy clinic, and our most recent clinic that we just announced 2 weeks ago is the Buck Colbert Franklin Legal Clinic. And as many may have heard, we're learning more and more outside of the state about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And so what the new clinic is going to do is focus on the North Tulsa and Greenwood area where that occurred, and we are going to be doing a broad range of legal services for this community that's still deemed low income and underrepresented. So they're going to handle taking on fraudulent small business loans. They're going to help with starting businesses. They're going to do some housing issues. They're going to do expungement arrangements and deferments for people who qualify, maybe some wills and trusts. So it's going to be a very broad legal clinic focused on a particular area in honor of the 100-year mark for the 1921 race riot. So we also have a very large externship program. We have more than 150 partner organizations. Our students can earn up to 12 credits through experiential learning, which can be through one of those clinics or through an externship opportunity. The externships are different than internships in that they are for law school credit. So when you hear us talk about internships and externships, that main difference is that the externships are for law school credit. So I wanted to highlight kind of some of our recent placements. As I mentioned, there are a ton. We have placements in 24 states, Washington, D.C. These can take place in any state. They can be international. I did highlight a few of our Texas placements there that you can see in Austin and the Dallas area. We have the Department of Health and Human Services, Office for Civil Rights in Denver, General Counsel for the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston, Los Angeles, St. Louis. We've had placements in Salt Lake City and Atlanta, and just south of Tampa, New York City. So many opportunities for our students to go and explore. And I think this has really helped us maintain strong employment rates post-graduation. You would have noticed on those highlights several professional development and employment highlights. One, we're a smaller law school, but we know that we have to really focus on these students that are coming from out of state that may want to go back to their home state to practice or go to another market. So we start working on that early on. We create a game plan so that they can have internships and externship opportunities in those markets where they want to practice so that they can be competitive with the students that maybe are attending law schools closer to those markets. So some students will do 6 and 6 hours over 2 summers and graduate in 2.5 years. That's popular for those that just want to speed through and finish. Others will do internships in those markets. They'll start building those professional networks, and then they'll bank those 12 credits and do a full semester away. So in that last semester away, they're doing their full 12 externship hours in a variety of different markets and locations. So this just highlights some of that large externship program. I got a little picture here of Goldie, our little dog, because she's cute and I like to share her. So I will go back to my screen here. So to talk a little bit about what the others have mentioned, we are doing tours on campus. I'm here today for some tours. We do those 2 days a week, and I will post a link for that. I've also posted our virtual tour. There is currently a preference for admitted students, especially during this peak time, probably April. We'll be really focused on March and April for admitted students, but the prospects will be planning later in the spring and summer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Henson. I do have a question in the chat that's kind of general, so feel free to answer to all of you. So financing law school. For students who have received full tuition scholarships from your law schools, what did their applications look like? I know it is a big, big hurdle financing law school. So if you could just briefly address that and just some other financing options or some other scholarship options.
Yeah, absolutely.
That students can apply to.
Yeah, so I think it's important to really look at those 509 reports when you're thinking about the merit-based scholarships, because those are often looking at the academically strong students, those that are in the strongest level for our applicant pool. So my median LSAT at Tulsa is a 155. It's in a different place than maybe some of my colleagues. And so those that qualify for a full tuition scholarship at Tulsa probably aren't going to qualify for one at other schools that have a much higher median LSAT and GPA. So I think it's important when you're doing your research on law schools, there's so many factors that students weigh to say what's going to be the best fit for me. And for some, financing law school is, a critical factor. It's one that's so important. I think all of my colleagues would say there's other things that you absolutely want to consider outside of finances. Law school is an investment for everyone. So you want to look at placement and bar pass rates and opportunities in these fields that you're interested in. But financial aid is important. So for those merit-based awards, those for us are going to be candidates that are above our 75th percentiles on the LSAT and GPA, and that have really polished applications, a well-written personal statement, strong letters of recommendation, some leadership opportunities. So they're just going to be strong applications, but those academics do matter. I mean, that LSAT and GPA is going to carry a lot of weight on those merit-based scholarships. I do want to flag a wonderful new resource that was just announced yesterday or the day before. We have always kind of known about some different places where you could go to look for scholarships, Scholarship Out, Scholarship Web, FastWeb, but Access Lex, which does a huge focus on financing law school. I'm going to give a shout out to them because they have some amazing workshops for planning for the financial aspect. They announced their new scholarship pool that has over 800 scholarships for students to go research, and these are focused on law school. So it breaks down some of that sorting through that you had to do through other platforms. So I know we've mentioned before, Google can be your friend. Absolutely, do research, find any other outside scholarships that you can qualify for. Focus also on, if finances is very important to you, the cost of living aspect, because remember, you're going to have tuition, but there's also fees, and then there's rent and the overall cost of attendance that may not be included in that scholarship. So just make sure that you have a financial plan, and you'll feel much better about that investment that you're taking on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have a couple high school students who are joining us in this webinar today, and we have a question from one of those students. So going into college, undergrad, and they're interested in pursuing law, what should they be mindful of, like starting college, and they, just to make their application from the get-go just amazing and wonderful?
Let me start out with that. I like talking to first year, second year college students. So I usually give them 3 pieces of advice. Number 1, study what you love, have a passion for the major that you choose. We don't have a real preference of what major that you study, because the good thing about law school that anyone can be successful in law school. You could have been a poli-sci major, you could have been an accounting major, a chemical engineering major, you could have been a modern dance performance major, but what we want is for you to be a really strong student and a really hard worker. So I'd say get your GPA as high as you can get it. It does not mean take easy classes. It means study what you love. If you love what you study, chances are you will excel academically. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'd say start cultivating and thinking about some of your professors, because you're going to want a couple of recommendation letters from your academic folks, from your professors. The better they know you, the better letter they'll write for you. So as you're going through your first year, second year, third year, find a few professors that you really get along with, that you love. You probably take their class more than once. And the more they know you, the better the letter. And then number 3, stay out of trouble. Please, no arrests by the police, no infractions at the university, academic probation, charges of plagiarism or cheating. I mean, it's not that one can't get into law school having made some mistakes in life. You certainly can, but it just messes up the application. So try to be a good citizen, try to stay out of trouble. Your parents will appreciate it. Your law school admissions committees will appreciate it. And it will really strengthen your application if you can avoid some of those mistakes. If you make a mistake, take responsibility for it. Okay, we'll move beyond it, but try to be mindful of that as you're going through your college time.
Thank you so much. So a question that is for SMU and UT, advice on resumes and just the law school admission process, anything in particular that we should be mindful of?
Yeah, so one of the things that I always like to encourage students to do in general, make yourself a spreadsheet and put all the law schools that you're interested in applying to. And this is going to be one of the categories you're going to want to keep up with. So you'll want to list things like resume, personal statements, any other required essays, any other optional pieces, because some law schools have page limits. Some have styling formats, some require different letters of recommendation. Some law schools have, like us, have optional letters of recommendation. So those are all things you'll want to keep up with. So I think however best that you can stay organized is very helpful when you're going through the application process. So for us, for your resume, again, we don't have page limits for any of our written statements. I can give you an average for our resumes. We see about 1.5 pages. Sometimes a page, sometimes 2 pages. But again, like those really depend on how much experience and background that you have. One of the things I encourage students, make sure you are telling us everything you've done since college. Your high school experience got you into college, right? So you don't need to include your high school award, your high school organizations, anything like that from high school for us, for your law school applications. Unless, again, like there's a caveat to that, just like there is in the practice of law for everything. Unless there's something that you did from high school that continued into college, that, you know, went on past like your high school year. So for example, a summer job, if you were a lifeguard in high school and then you were still a lifeguard in college, if you did volunteer work for a certain organization in high school and then you continued to do that through college, then include those things. But if it kind of has a hard end line in high school, you don't need to include that. You can also elaborate things a little bit more on a law school resume for us compared to what you would for, say, a job application. So if there's an award that you think that we won't know what it is on the admissions committee, if there's an organization that is not super common, for example, some of the ones that I've seen in the past, it was an organization that did volunteer work through riding horses with children who had some sort of physical disabilities, but we didn't know what the organization was. So things like that, you'll want to put a little, you know, like a semicolon, a dash, whatever, volunteered with children organization, things like that, that you can explain a little bit. Don't turn your resume into your personal statement. You don't need to write a full paragraphs about every organization. But if it's something that you think is not like super common knowledge for us on the admissions committee, we're not going to have the time to go look up everything. Give us a little bit more of an explanation as to what that thing is.
I echo what Heather says. Now we invite up to a 3-page resume. So we just say the resume is a great way for us to get to know you and how you spend your time in your life after high school. So help us get to know you by your resume. And I would say that it's helpful to put some quantitative material in there. Say, you know, I volunteer at a soup kitchen. Okay, do you volunteer 1 hour a month? Do you volunteer 5 hours a week? So give us a little bit of some quantitative information. You know, I tutor math. Okay, is that 1 student? Is that 10 students? So just give us a little bit more to go by. But we appreciate resumes. And I always encourage people, certainly you're going to have an education section on your resume, maybe a work section, maybe a leadership and volunteer section, awards or citations section, honorary citation. But I'd like to see a personal section. You know, it kind of humanizes you to the admissions committee. So, you know, I play the violin, I speak French, I like to cook, I am a Game of Thrones expert, whatever it is, but throw in some of those, even if it's just 1 line, throw in a little bit of your personality. And I think that makes the admissions committee smile. I think they recognize that you're more than just someone who studies or someone who goes to work, but you're a full, well-rounded person. Our admissions committee loves to see those personal attributes and skills and qualities and things that you love. We love to see that.
And I would love to add one quick note, if you don't mind, especially since these are some younger kids that are looking ahead. I think it's important to focus on that resume, but when you're looking at law school, I know when you're in high school, you want to have every possible extracurricular activity you can to really fill that resume. My advice for college is, yes, we want a well-rounded candidate, but what we're really looking for is leadership within organizations. What you don't want to do is overextend yourself. Put your emphasis on something else at the expense of your GPA. because at the end of our review, what matters is that question of, can you handle the academic rigor of law school, and your GPA is going to matter. So it is great when they are, college athletes, when they're involved with student government, when they're leadership in multiple organizations, in their fraternity or sorority. But if they did that at the expense of their GPA, the committee is going to say, what is going to happen in law school with that? And at some point it's expected to say, I need to make sure that my academics are also a priority. And so be involved. We want to rail around the candidate, absolutely. But remember throughout college that the academics are going to carry weight.
Thank you so much. So talking about personal statements, we are in a pandemic, and would law schools want kind of like a personal experience through the pandemic and the personal statements, or what kind of stuff that we should be mindful of when writing a personal statement?
I haven't said anything in a bit, so I can start there. So with the personal statement, it's really about thinking, we're trying to get to know you as a person. So we were just talking about the resume, where the resume is it's a list. Like, you can describe things, but it's a list. The personal statement is a chance for you to tell us a story, to maybe choose one thing and tell us about you. So maybe it's your experience during the pandemic. Maybe something happened during the pandemic that did shape you as a person, and you think that's a great way for us to get to know you. But it might be, sometimes we see things about individuals who grew up abroad, and so they think that the fact that they lived in India until they were 13, that's a big part of who they are, and that's a big part of their identity. So that's what they talk about. So it's really about choosing that one or two things that helped us to get to know you as a person, and not just rehashing your resume. So I think that's a big part, is think about the purpose for us is to get to know you. So choose something that is a way for us to get to know you. And it is really personal, so we can't give you an exact one size fits all, talk about this, because that doesn't help. You're someone unique, and the personal statement is the best chance for us to get to know you as you, and not as the numbers, not as the resume.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Talk about the pandemic. I want to ask if there has been any changes in the course instruction, and if there are any COVID policies going over into the next fall. I know it's still kind of all in the blur right now, but if you all want to briefly address that.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I know everyone's a little different. I think the majority have been in some form of online hybrid fashion, in order to keep social distancing, to keep the numbers down. At TU, we have done that. We do have some classes that are meeting in person. That's really smaller sections of legal writing, some of our seminar courses, trial practice and trial skills, where they are able to have less students in a classroom. Those have continued in person, with the option for an online option for those that may have health conditions that they don't want to be on campus. Now, saying that, all of us here are under the grace of the ABA that is giving us a variance to do this. So normally there is a cap for the number of online hours that a student can have as part of their JD curriculum. So what will happen moving forward is not just an evaluation of all of us as a school saying, what do we want to do, but what is going to be allowed by the ABA. And so that is a great question that all of us say, we don't know. I think that what we have shown is that there is an ability to do synchronous teaching where students are called on, they have to be prepared for class, that it operates very similarly to being in that classroom. I think that has been a hesitation for the ABA for many years, that this is not the type of program that you log in whenever and review a video and answer some questions. So, I think that we have a lot to talk about, that the ABA has a lot to talk about. But for us, our hope is to be in person in the fall. That is what we are planning, to have at least more in person on the fall. Of course, this all depends on vaccine rollout numbers, lack of another spike, but the goal is to be on campus if at all possible. I'm hopeful that the ABA allows a little bit of leeway so that those that do have health conditions may have this online option continue, but a lot of our hands are tied at this point.
Awesome. So just a final question to each of you. What is one piece of advice that you can give to a prospective law school student and just a aspiring law school student just in general?
Mine's super short. So I love what Dave said, do what you love. You know, I think a lot of students get stuck on, I have to be pre-law, I have to be poli-sci. You don't have to be pre-law. One of the students that I love right now that's in our first year class, she was an opera major. So like that has nothing to do with pre-law. So just do what you love. And that goes for your classes, your major, and anything that you're getting involved into.
One piece I'd give is, and it's similar to Heather, that we don't expect you to be an expert in the law when you go to law school, but one thing we do want is for you to be a really strong communicator. So that means the ability to read a lot of information, the ability to write well, so really strong writing skills, and thirdly, any confidence in public speaking. So try to find these things in your college career or outside of college, but reading, writing, and speaking is going to be fundamental to the profession of an attorney. So try to bring strong communication skills to law school.
Miss Erin and Miss Megan, any last words?
Sure. So I completely agree with what both my colleagues said. Not surprisingly, we're all doing the same job. So yes, completely agree with them. The one thing I will note, especially for those students who said they were, still in high school, still kind of looking, is, well, yes, do what you love. Be a music major, be an engineer. We have all those types of students coming to law school. I do think it's helpful to think through and see what it's like to be a lawyer. So maybe it's not doing a full-time internship, maybe it's not joining Pre-Law Society, but see if you can shadow a lawyer for a week. See if you can, meet with some alumni from your school who went on to law school, just so you have an idea of what it's like in the day-to-day life of a lawyer and different types of lawyers. So, litigators who are in court every day, very different experience from, say, someone who does intellectual property and is reviewing patents. They're in there just reviewing documents, like it's totally different, but they both went to law school. So I always think it can be helpful to just get a feel for what it's like, because then it's a little bit easier to choose which law school, because you have a little bit more of an idea of what you want to do afterwards. Oh, and talk to admissions. There's my last one. Sorry, talk to us. It's always important. We are here to help. We want to chat with you.
She fed into mine. I was going to say, as you start to evaluate, especially as things open up in the future, go visit law schools. Talk to admissions counselors. We want to get to know you. It's important for you to have a feel for the universities that you're looking at. Once there are more recruitment opportunities, when you have law schools coming to your campus, whether that's virtually or in person, to talk about their programs, go. Even if it's not one that's maybe your top 3 that you're looking at, go. Because you're going to learn more about the types of questions you should be asking, the different things that are available at various law schools. Just become informed. Being informed is so important. So start visiting law schools, look at taking the LSAT early so that if you have to retake it, you have plenty of time to do so. Do not be a last minute applicant, please. It makes it so much harder. Apply early, apply early. And as my mother always said, make smart choices. And I'll leave it with that.
Well, thank you so much to each one of you. I know our participants have found this very helpful. So thank you so much for taking the time out.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nida. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And me and your mother, Megan, would get along. Make some good choices. I mean, she's preaching my tune right there. I know some of our law school folks really do have to leave. So they've provided their email addresses in the chat. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But from the bottom of my heart, you all, thank you so much. Y'all know y'all are my extended family. I'm so grateful to have you, and thank you for joining us today. Bye now. And thank you so much, Nida. Great job. Thank you. Okay, everyone, this is the portion of our wonderful program. So excited about it. This is the Ask Me Anything mentorship experience. And so whether you've pre-registered for it or not, if you want to join us, I encourage you to join us, because we're going to literally pause our webinar just so that people can participate in this. In order to do this now, and I sent out emails previously, but just to make sure that everybody understands, you will have to leave this webinar and then get back into Zoom and join the meeting ID listed here below. If you are comfortable and confident doing that right now, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to go back to this slide here in just a second, but I'm going to tell you what's to come. As soon as we finish, oh, there we go. As soon as we finish working our mentorship program, we will rejoin this event. You will come back here to this Zoom webinar. So all you'll have to do is click on the link that you were sent, that sent you right here, to come back here at 12:15, because this is an exceptional panel experience that we're going to have. It's creative ways to use your law degree, and you're going to hear from a judge, JAG professionals. You're going to hear from social media expert that actually practices social media law. You're going to hear from an attorney who does literally video gaming law. What? Mind blown. So you don't want to miss that. And that's going to start at 12:15. So I'm going to go back, take a break, run to the restroom, stretch your legs, do some squats, get a drink, and then join us. You'll leave this webinar, join us at the other AT&T and Haynes and Boone Ask Me Anything attorney breakout session. For those of you that's been dying to ask any and all questions, out loud, this is the best opportunity to do that. Meeting ID 91751281160. You'll see that as a prompt when you get ready to join the other meeting. I look forward to seeing you all over there. We'll go ahead and take this off. I know you all enjoy seeing your lovely faces. Okay. So thank you guys for rejoining us. We have a very, very special presentation for you today. I'm incredibly excited. First and foremost, this panel is a panel of superstars. Never before have we assembled so many wonderful legal Avengers, and I'm thrilled to have this slate of individuals speaking with you. So first, I'm going to just give them a general introduction, and then I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. First, we have with us Mr. Brian Bouffard. Brian earned his bachelor's degree at TCU in 1992 and graduated with honors from Duke University School of Law in 1997. As a U.S. Navy JAG, Brian served on active duty with the U.S. Marine Corps, where he prosecuted and defended more than 550 Marines and sailors in court-martial cases in 5 years. That's incredible. He currently is serving as an attorney with the Department of Defense and assigned to the Public Defender's Office for foreign detainees held at Guantanamo Bay accused of terrorism-related offenses. Please join me in giving a virtual welcome to Mr. Brian Bouffard. Brian, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I mean, just beyond that, I'm really, really honored to be here, and I'm just want to thank you again, Amber, for inviting me. And yeah, I'm a trial lawyer. I've been a trial lawyer my whole career, and am happy to give any insight. And I know one of our other speakers, Colonel Holcombe, will probably echo me on this, but we can talk to you about coming into the Judge Advocate General's Corps in the military services. And at least for myself, I found that just I couldn't have asked for a better way to start my legal career. So, particularly for those of you who are interested in litigating cases, I just looking really forward to taking your questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brian. Okay, next we have a wonderful gentleman, and he also happens to be my former law professor. You will catch me calling him Professor Browning. I will try not to, but he has earned his stripes, and he has earned through his remarkable career the title of Justice Browning for his time served on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Very exciting stuff, and he's going to share with you a little bit about that. But just a little background on the Honorable John G. Browning. Justice Browning graduated with honors with a degree in history and comparative literature from Rutgers University and went on to receive his law degree from the University of Texas School of Law in 1989. During his extensive legal career spanning more than 30 years, he has literally written the book on social media litigation for the 21st century. And you all will really, really enjoy his work in social media law. He's going to go into that. He's the author of the Social Media Litigation Practice Guide and the Lawyer's Guide to Social Networking, Understanding Social Media and the Law. Please join me in virtually welcoming the Honorable John G. Browning.
Thank you very much, Amber. It's wonderful to be a part of this program, and honored to be on this panel with so many other distinguished folks. I think you've summed it up. I don't know that I can really elaborate much more. Except I'll ruin it by telling the truth. I've been a trial lawyer for over 30 years, handling civil trials and appeals, and have had the benefit of being able to on my abundant spare time when I don't sleep, and nights and weekends, write 5 law books and 40 law review articles and hundreds of other legal articles, and get to teach as a law professor for over 10 years now, and speak at law schools all around the country on subjects related to technology and the law. And then I got the chance to be a judge, and I've served as both a trial judge and more recently as an appellate justice on the Fifth Court of Appeals. So I got to see all the things that I was complaining about for so many years about, why do judges rule this way? And it was very interesting handling my first oral argument as a judge, asking the questions instead of being the lawyer on the hot seat. So thanks very much. I look forward to sharing with you more about whatever insights I can offer.
Thank you so much. We're happy to have you. Our next speaker is the epitome of girl power, Colonel Donna R. Holcombe. Colonel Holcombe graduated magna cum laude with her bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Alabama, and went on to receive her JD from Stetson University College of Law. Her career also spans over 30 years, where she has represented U.S. Air Force in numerous countries, including Japan, Korea, Guam, and Iraq, retiring with the rank of colonel in 2018. Colonel Holcombe is currently serving as Chief Civil Law at the 47th Flying Training Wing Legal Office at Laughlin Air Force Base, which is the largest pilot training unit in the Air Force. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Donna Holcombe.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much for including me on your distinguished panel. It's such a thrill to be here and to talk to students who may be interested in careers in law. I have for some reason, in 5th grade, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. Don't ask me why, because at that point in time, I had probably never met a lawyer or talked to a lawyer. I probably saw a TV show about a lawyer that looked really interesting. So I decided that's what I wanted to do with my career. So from that point on, my goal was to become a lawyer. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that, but that was my goal. So I continued on my education path and obtained my law degree. At that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my law degree. So I looked around and I looked at the Air Force, which seemed to offer some great opportunities to have a lot of responsibility early on in your career. The last thing I wanted to do was be a research flunky in the library researching cases for a judge or another attorney. So the Air Force offered so many opportunities to do things early on and offered the opportunity to be exposed to wide areas of practice, from criminal law to medical law, to legal assistance, which is where we help airmen and their families with personal civil legal matters. So the breadth of the scope of practice in the military is quite large, and that was very interesting to me. So I was able to accept a commission in the Air Force, and 30 years later, I retired at the rank of colonel, which sometimes I'd sit in meetings with a bunch of other colonels, and I would go, how did I get here? How am I so blessed to number one, be serving my country, number two, have attained this rank. But it's just such a blessing to serve and work with incredible legal professionals, both active duty, reserve guard, civilians, enlisted and officers, just a terrific career. And I love, and I have fond memories, not only of the places and people, but just the various things I was able to do in service to my country. Just as Brian said, it's a great opportunity. So happy to share those things and ideas, and maybe plant a seed in someone to say, hey, maybe I'd like to pursue a JAG career in any branch of the service. I promise you do, you'll get a great start in your legal career, whether you stay for 4 years or whether you make it a career and serve for 20 or 30. Thank you again for having me today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are plenty of seeds to be planted. I mean, earlier today, we had so many students asking questions that you wouldn't believe, just trying to explore, trying to figure out what it is that they want to do. So these are perfect opportunities to spark an interest that students never knew was there, which is why we wanted to do something like this. So thank you for joining us. Our last panelist, you guys will find incredibly interesting and exciting. What he does is probably unlike anything you even knew that you could do with a law degree. Mr. Stephen V. Walkowiak. And Steve is a co-chair of the Video Games and Esports Group and a litigation shareholder at Greenberg Traurig, which is a law firm here in the DFW area that is an international law firm. In addition to many unique and interesting legal aspects of his job, Steve is involved in esports regulation. What does that mean? You spend all your time playing video games. He gets paid for you playing your video games, okay? Stephen is involved in esports regulation and advises clients regarding video game disciplinary decisions and unique privacy protections required in youth online gaming. Mr. Walkowiak is also a guest lecturer for video games and esports course at Texas A&M University School of Law as well. So please join me in welcoming Steve Walkowiak.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate this invite, this opportunity. Talking to students, teaching is honestly one of my favorite activities. I love to certainly share my passion, and as I look around our distinguished panel, I'm having a little bit of a Dunning-Kruger moment where I say, how am I here? I've got Justice Browning, and the Colonel Holcombe and Brian as well. I just have a little video game practice group here that I've been able to form over the last couple of years. Again, my career path, I started small and kind of look where I am now, and at times don't quite understand it, don't quite believe it, but people still play video games, and that practice area seems to grow, so I'm going to keep doing it. A little note on history. When I first came out of law school, I started a very small boutique litigation firm. My background is litigation. For the first, say, 10 some odd years of my practice, I did exclusively commercial litigation. I was lucky enough to get in with some really outstanding mentors who pushed me out of the nest, sometimes kicking and screaming. So I got a lot of really good experience very, very early on in my career, up to where I joined Greenberg Traurig. And as Amber mentioned, we are an international law firm, one of the largest firms in the world at this point, with something like 45 international offices. So we span the gambit. So coming from an office of 10 attorneys where I started to one where we have 2,500 is sometimes overwhelming, but extremely exciting. And again, as Amber mentioned as well, I'm co-chair of our international video game and esports practice. Yes, that's a real thing. That's always the first question I get. That does exist. Video game law is a thing. I tell my parents that constantly when they call me and say, no, you can tell me what you really do. Do you need help? Are you eating enough? And I say, yes, I am. But no, happy to answer questions, and I'm sure we'll get more into the weeds here in a bit. But video games as a practice area is huge. It's diverse. It's constantly moving. That's one of the things I like best about it, is that no 2 days are exactly alike. And I look forward to sharing those experiences with all of you. And again, thank you for having me. Thank you to my co-panelists for letting me interlope a little bit on this panel, given all your history and certainly all you've done. It's my privilege and pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much. And please believe me, each and every one of you is distinguished and amazing and fantastic. And that's why it's such a privilege for us to hear from you all today. So I'm going to drop off the screen so they get more of you and less of me. And we're going to work this question in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll go Steve, then Colonel Holcombe, then we'll have Justice Browning, and then we'll have Brian. Describe what a typical day in your practice looks like.
All right. I don't know that there is a typical day. I can do anything from deal with a team side issue. For instance, let's just take today. This morning, I started off helping one of the teams I represent get some players from South Korea and Japan through their visa issues to the United States. From there, I negotiated a sponsorship agreement for a popular streamer, someone that you might see on Twitch or YouTube. They have a sponsorship agreement with a product. And so working out the details of that. I'm also, after this call, I have scheduled a conference with an arbitrator dealing with an arbitration litigation for a player that was on a team is no longer. And so the subject of how they're no longer on that team is the subject of this arbitration. Later this afternoon, I'll actually be teaching in Japan via Zoom at a place called Keio University on the opportunities available to esports individuals. So folks that want to be in the esports world, but aren't necessarily a player. So talking about the hospitality industry, where they might be able to jump in there, talking about some of the intellectual property issues that arise in this space. And tomorrow, it may be completely different. So that's a somewhat long way of saying, if it has anything to do with the industry, my practice area right now is dealing with that. I act quite a lot like a quarterback. The issue will come in to me through phone, email, what have you, and then I'll dole that out to some of my colleagues who are area specialists. Again, I'm not an immigration attorney, but our expert on immigration. I will interface with the client to help explain that issue to my immigration lead, and they'll take the ball and run with it. If I've got a particular trademark or branding issue where we're in need of filing a trademark or seeking some protection, I'll interface with that client and then hand that off to my IP or IT expert to help move that along. So it's a lot of interfacing. It is certainly a team effort. I am blessed to be surrounded by some incredibly talented lawyers that are truly at the top of their field. And then I get to take all the credit and smile, and they do all the hard work. So again, just truly a team effort. With that, I'll pass it back to let's see, I guess we're gonna go to Colonel Holcombe if we're doing reverse alphabetical order.
Yes, Colonel Holcombe, yes. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but if any of you have questions, please feel free to send those straight to the Q&A, and we will get these attorneys to answer those for you. And I will try and ask those as seamlessly as we possibly can. Before we jump to Colonel Holcombe on that question, there was a question for you, Steve, and I'll read that now. So what are your thoughts on cryptocurrency in relation to online esports, especially being that this type of currency is harder to trace?
A broad issue. Again, I mean, cryptocurrency, to the extent it is secure, it's regulated. I know certain of my clients are interested in utilizing that. And we do some advising as far as ensuring everything that the team does as far as a transaction is above board. But to the extent it's just like another currency, I know Tesla, for instance, is interested in using that to pay for, if you want to buy a Tesla, for instance. It's an emerging issue. Teams and organizations sometimes don't want to embrace that level of risk, so they're moving very slowly. But I think it's an emerging market. It's an emerging currency, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, that can be used, and people are interested in adopting that technology. Again, there's some caution there. They don't want to run afoul of any rule or any regulation with respect to anything like money laundering or things that might get them in trouble. So they are moving slowly, but there's interest. Any emerging technology, and especially as most of my clients tend to exist in the digital space, they want to be cutting edge. So it's finding that balance, like most things, of the ability to take it, the ability to use that to process transactions, but at the same time, being sure you're not going to do anything that's going to expose your company to an unhealthy level of risk. And so it's that dance, that give and pull, or push and pull, and finding that right balance between the two.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Colonel Holcombe?
Good morning again. Like Steve, I would say no day is typical, especially in an Air Force legal practice. In my current job, I am what we call the Chief of Civil Law, and civil law encompasses a wide variety of areas from contracts, government ethics, labor and employment law, and just a bunch of environmental law and other fiscal law and other kind of what we call cats and dogs issues that are related to how a military installation is run and operated. So my typical day will usually involve doing some research, writing legal memoranda to advise commanders and our civilian personnel office about disciplinary actions, either proposals or final decisions on adverse disciplinary actions against our civilian employees in the labor law arena. I can assist our litigation team, which resides at another base, in helping write memos and other things relating to our litigation relating to labor and employment law issues. For example, we have cases before the Merit Systems Protection Board, as well as before the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So we do a lot of litigation in those arenas as well. So I also advise and help assist in getting those cases ready to go to litigation. With respect to some of my other practice areas, I oftentimes will have to provide briefings to particularly our new employees, because we are required as public servants to receive ethics briefings as new employees. So one of my roles is to provide that briefing so that our new employees understand what it means to be a public servant and the ethical rules and restrictions that will apply to them in the course of their employment here at Laughlin Air Force Base. So those are some of the things I do as well. Additionally, going back to the labor and employment law, I've been involved in mediations where we're trying to settle either EEOC or MSPB cases. We are renegotiating a labor master labor agreement with our union. So again, no day is typical and no day is the same. So what I'm doing today will probably look completely different than what I'm doing on Monday. I will say that one of the things I particularly enjoy about a military law practice is the ability to be doing multiple things in various areas of law. So I'm not always going to be looking at a labor and employment issue. I might be doing that today, but tomorrow I could be looking at a contracts issue. And next week I could be looking at environmental law issues. So those are some of the great things that a military practice allows you to do, is to not always just get pigeonholed into one particular area. So you may have to learn a little bit about multiple areas of practice, particularly if you're at a small office like our office, where we only have a handful of attorneys. So we all do a little bit of everything. And then another area in which I'm not currently engaged is called military justice. So in the military services, we have our own criminal code called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So as a military justice attorney, I would be advising commanders and first sergeants, who are the enlisted leaders of units, about disciplinary actions and potential criminal actions if our active duty or reserve or guard military individuals are engaged or have engaged in conduct that is potentially criminal. We can take criminal actions against them in a court martial, or the Air Force and all the services also have other administrative actions that we can take in order to discipline our military service members. So those are some of the types of things that you could be involved in if you were in the military practice.
Thank you so much. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, I was looking at the JAG program. I loved the diversity of legal practice areas that you could engage in, but I was also attracted to the fact that I could retire at 40 if I wanted to. So I think with 20 years of experience, you can retire. Is that correct? Something like that. 20, yeah. Oh my goodness. I could be close to retirement right now, or not, depending upon if I want to pretend I'm younger. Justice Browning, your thoughts?
Sure. First of all, like the other panelists, I'd agree, no day is a typical day. And perhaps even more so for me, because I've had a very varied practice background. I had my own firm, a small firm, for over 10 years. I've been a partner in several different national law firms. I'm back with a national law firm now. And I kind of became a jack of all trades. I'm known probably more for my experience in technology in the law and representing companies involving technology issues that go to litigation. But I've tried pretty much every type of case there is, from small intersection collisions to multi-fatality product liability cases and huge class action toxic tort cases. So I've had a very varied background, which helps when clients of mine, many of whom are national companies, come to me with different problems that need to be solved. So a typical day for me can consist of bouncing from a hearing on an online defamation case to meeting with a client, nowadays via Zoom, but prior to that in person, involving some concerns about how they want to avoid litigation. Some of what I do is like doctors practicing preventative law. I practice preventative medicine. I practice preventative law, and I'll advise companies on things like their arbitration agreements in contracts, or their data privacy provisions, so that they can be in compliance with an increasingly complex regulatory and compliance scheme around the country and internationally. So, it may be handling a deposition. It may be trying a commercial arbitration before a group like the American Arbitration Association. It can vary from a giant federal court class action to a smaller, business commercial dispute or consumer protection type of case. I also represent professionals, including doctors and lawyers, in medical malpractice cases. So for many of my clients, it's not just a matter of a risk of money damages, but their very reputation that's on the line. So I'm constantly reminded of the stakes with a lot of what I do. I remember trying a case in Dallas some years ago, big case, many millions of dollars involved, and the general counsel of the company was there with me as we were there 2 or 3 days into trial. And I asked him during a break, I said, so, worst case scenario, what happens if we lose this case? And he said, oh, well, we'll have to eliminate an entire division of the company and hundreds of people will lose their jobs. Or we might even have to file for bankruptcy, but no pressure, John. So, is that type of, environment. I've had everything from, huge high stakes bet the company cases to cases that may be smaller, but they're just as important to the individuals or small businesses that retain me.
I have a question that I've gotten. Would you ever represent individuals like the young lady that was arrested for her TikTok posts? I think I think I'm familiar with this case.
I've represented folks for what they've said on social media. I've represented folks who've been accused of different online activity and misconduct. Years ago, back in the early days of downloading music, when downloading music was not as closely regulated and monetized as it is now, I represented a number of folks who had been sued for so-called piracy by the Recording Industry Association of America, and in fact got a reputation for defending folks who had been sued by mistake or sued wrongfully. That at some point, some of the artists themselves actually retained me and were paying my legal fees. So that was kind of nice.
It's funny, the folks in the audience would not know Napster, but that's immediately what comes to mind when you talk about that.
Exactly.
Yes. Brian, please share with us what a day in the life of your practice area would look like.
Yeah, and I was thinking, listening to these other folks, I guess the best way for me to describe a day in the life now kind of requires me to describe a day in the life for the past 14 years for me before September, when I started the job that I'm in now. So in 2006, I left the DA's office in Tarrant County to do solo criminal defense. And so from 2006 to September, well, a little bit before September, that's what I did. So I represented individuals accused of crimes in Texas courts, and then also certain military members who were charged in courts martial and who decided that they wanted to hire a civilian lawyer, which is something that you have the ability to do at your own expense. You can't get the government to pay for that like they would pay for an active duty judge advocate to represent you. So I had a typical daily battle rhythm, basically, of a criminal defense lawyer, which is I'm in court probably at least 3 days a week, often 5 days a week. I'm out there talking to witnesses. I'm writing motions. I'm assessing evidence. I'm trying to decide, is this a case that I want to recommend to my client we go to trial, or is it something that maybe the client would be better off with a plea? And what does my client want to do? And so a lot of my day, was sitting and talking to people, and I was usually their sole advocate. Most people who hired me, I was their only lawyer. On military cases, I would be the lead counsel with one or more judge advocates working with me to reach the right result in that case. So coupled with that, as a solo practitioner, I was also running a business. So I had to do all the things that you would do to run a small business as a solo. So worrying about marketing type stuff and utilities and office space and all that kind of stuff. And I got to where, that was the kind of stuff that chafed more. I liked doing that a whole lot less than I liked being, in the courtroom and standing up for my clients. So at a time, I would carry anywhere probably on average between 25 to 40 cases at a time. So those are individual clients. They're charged with anything from, DWI to premeditated murder. It just depends on what was in my case inventory at a particular time. So I started in September working for the MCDO, which is the Military Commissions Defense Organization. It's based out of the Pentagon. And like Amber said, we are essentially the public defender's office for Guantanamo Bay detainees, people charged with terrorism offenses. And so I was hired to do something really pretty new for me. And that is, I'm still dealing with, essentially criminal litigation, essentially in a quasi-military context with rules that I'm very familiar with. But I was hired to be a supervisory counsel. So my day now, even though I'm lead counsel, and when this case goes to trial, I'm going to be there running the trial just as I have been for the last 14 years. A big part of my job now is supervising other people. So for my whole career, it's just been me. If something needed to be done, I would have to do it. If a motion needs to get written, I'm writing it. If a witness needs to be talked to, I'm going to go out there and talk to that witness. And now I'm in this weird but very interesting position of having to expand, or in a lot of ways discover a new skill set, which is leadership, in a way that I just have never been called upon to really exercise leadership before. So I've got a staff on my team of 8 people. I've got 2 other attorneys. They're both military officers, JAGs. I've got 2 paralegals. I've got an intelligence analyst, an investigator, and a linguist. And they all work for me, for our team. So a lot of what I do today is, rather than being the guy who has to do certain things, I'm the guy who has to ensure that certain things get done. So that is an interesting switch, but one that I'm finding I really enjoy. I like mentoring people, and I like just standing up for my folks and making sure that they're taken care of. So that's kind of a typical day for me right now.
Excellent. So we have a question specifically for you, Brian. Do you have any advice or recommendations for those interested in pursuing criminal law? I assume within the JAG program. And is it a rewarding profession?
Well, to answer the second question first, yes, it's extremely rewarding. We practice in a system that I would describe as very flawed. When you talk about doing justice, I would be very hard pressed to tell you that our current criminal law scheme does justice. I think when it achieves justice, it almost achieves it by accident and not on purpose. But what's undeniably true is the people who are caught up in that system are oftentimes as helpless as anyone you can imagine. And when you are their lawyer, you may be the only person in the entire process, and maybe in some cases in their whole lives, who actually cares about them and cares about reaching the right result for them. And so when you can do that, I don't think that there's anything more rewarding than that, at least to me. I would say that if you're thinking about a career in criminal law, I don't know that I would say that there's necessarily anything that you need to do differently right now as a high schooler or an undergrad student. But once you roll into law school, you can certainly focus on the types of courses that would help you in a standing up on your feet, litigating in front of a judge and jury type way. And you'll be able to see what those courses are, and maybe in some cases what they aren't. If you're in law school and you want to become a lawyer, you're going to have to take and pass the bar exam. And I think one piece of advice I would have is not to get too wrapped up about I've got to take, for example, family law, let's say, I've got to do that for the bar exam, so I need to take a whole course on it. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that there are bar review courses that will help fill up the gaps in what you don't know. And I would recommend focusing when you're in law school on the things that excite you intellectually and that lead you toward the career that you want. So, you know, criminal procedure and evidence and stuff like that, stuff that gets you on your feet, gets you used to talking. And then the other thing I'd recommend is in your spare time, you should be writing. You should be writing all kinds of stuff. Get good at expressing yourself on the page, and a lot of stuff is going to flow from there. I don't know if I answered that question well, but that's what I got.
No, I think that was perfectly fine. Thank you. That's perfect. So we've gotten several questions, and I think there are some responses that are going in through the chat as well. So I'm going to try and see if I can balance all the questions in one giant question that's posed to all of you, because it may help everybody. What advice or recommendations would you make for anybody that's looking to go into the practice areas that you've gone down? So for my JAG representatives, what advice would you give for somebody looking to go into JAG? For Steve, you know, if somebody is like, I want to make video gaming and esports law my thing. And for Justice Browning, if I want to either one day be a judge or really go into the social media / tech law, what advice would you give them? And keeping in mind, we have a mix of college and high school. Justice Browning.
Okay. Well,
sorry, y'all were waiting for me.
My first advice for any prospective law student, or you know, someone who's actually in law school right now, is you know, very much, you know, like Brian said, take what interests you, take what you like, and just focus on doing well at it. In my law school class, we had people from varied backgrounds, people who had been engineers, people who were classically trained, you know, musicians. We had, you know, people of all kinds of backgrounds. I didn't come from a techie background. I had a liberal arts degree, but I was interested in technology and how it was transforming society. And I took a course, an elective course, a big survey course in law school on intellectual property law. It interested me, and it wasn't on the bar exam. It wasn't something that I thought that I would use in my practice. And then years later, you know, when I had a software developer, you know, client, you know, come to me and say, hey, can you help me out with this? I was able to do that. And I went on to handle many, you know, IP related cases. I've tried copyright infringement cases. I've represented publishers. I've represented musicians. I've handled patent infringement cases in some of the most fiercely contested jurisdictions in the country. You know, I've handled trademark infringement cases, and I don't consider myself a trademark lawyer, but I've, you know, argued before the U.S. Patent and Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. So, you know, you never know what is going to come in. I don't consider myself a sports and entertainment lawyer, but I've represented a Heisman Trophy finalist, a Grammy winner, a Broadway producer, and a movie studio. You never know who is going to come knocking at your door. The important thing is that you pursue what interests you and that you're going to do well at, and keep an open mind as to, you know, what you might like to specialize in. But that's the advice I would give.
Excellent. Steve?
Yeah, I think Justice Browning covered it really well. The only thing I might add is the core fundamentals of whatever you're doing are important. I don't care if you're, you know, a professional athlete or a lawyer or whatever else. The fundamentals are key. So when you're in law school, when you're a young attorney, whether you're even in high school now, take pride in the activities that you're learning and really develop those foundational skills as best you possibly can. In my practice every day, I'm drawing from things that might not necessarily be in my hardcore practice area, but there are skills that I developed as a result of the fundamentals. And with that, I'd also echo, the point that Justice Browning made with respect to malleability. I did not, 20 years ago, decide that I was going to be a video game and esports lawyer. I mean, that didn't exist really fundamentally, just it wasn't around. But by adapting and learning those skills and seeing a need for that in the practice, I was able to pivot my practice and really develop where we are now. So that's perhaps a longer way of saying keep an open mind. Things that you may value and really want to do or think you want to do right now might not be that specialty that you desire, next week, next month, 5 years, 10 years from now. So keep that open mind, learn everything that you can, and don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Again, this practice group didn't exist 5 years ago, and we walked into our chairman's office, knocked on the door, and he said, go, give it a shot. So that's terrifying, but we're here today with the practice group and the success we have because of it.
Excellent. Colonel Holcombe and Mr. Bouffard, do the two of you have any specific advice for people seeking entry into the JAG program? And I'll add another question onto that because I see that there's something specific to someone that's wanting to do it in their 30s. So if I'm trying to read this question. I think it's is there a delayed entry program for someone who is in their 30s into the JAG program? I don't know.
I know there's an age limit. I don't know. I want to say it's 35. Is that right?
Okay.
I believe that is right. I think during the height of the Gulf Wars, the commission age had been increased to 40. I'm not sure if it's still 40 or if it has come back down to 35, but there is an age limit. I just don't recall offhand what it is. But I can, at the end, I can give you information about who to contact and where to look online, and they can give you that information. But to echo both Justice Browning and even Steve and Brian, find your passion and do that. But as you're finding your passion, be sure that you are developing skills and things like communication, whether that's oral or written. Develop leadership skills. Find ways where you can learn leadership, because in the JAG Corps, that will be important as you progress through rank and get promoted. At some point, you'll promote where you're going to not be, as Brian talked about, you're not going to be the action officer who's doing all the work and the research. You're going to become a manager and a supervisor who's leading an office of other attorneys and paralegals. So developing those leadership skills as you're going along will be important, and you'll have opportunities to use that as a member of the JAG Corps. But speaking and writing are crucial, fundamental things that all lawyers need to know how to do, whether that's communicating with your client, whether that's communicating with a judge, another attorney, another member of the bar, or in a criminal court, a member of a jury. In the military, we call those panels. So you have to know your audience and know how to tailor your message, both in content and in form, to your audience. So having those great communication skills will serve you well no matter what area of law you go into. And I will also echo what Steve said is pursue your passion, but understand what interests you today may not interest you 5 years from now. You will find that over the course of your careers, the things that you thought you really wanted to do may not hold interest to you as you learn more about different areas of law, things that are out there, and how you may change what interests you. But as your interests change, be brave and be willing to pursue that new passion. Because if you stick in something that is an old passion, you will find that you hate it and you won't be effective at it.
To dovetail off that, I don't disagree with anything that any of my fellow panelists have said at all. I would say for criminal law, and I suspect also for family law, although I've never done family law, it's really, really important to be able to communicate one-on-one with your client in a way that you can make them feel as safe as possible. I mean, you know, in a criminal defense situation, you know, there's so many things that are beyond anyone's control, but they need to know that when they look at you, they see somebody who is 100% completely on their side. And I think one of the ways you do that is just to kind of work on yourself some, and just be mindful of why you're going into, say, criminal law, to really truly help people, and to keep that at the forefront of your mind, because that's not the kind of thing that you should lose over time, you know, becoming jaded with. I will also offer you a piece of advice that I failed to follow myself and have regretted it ever since, and that is learn a relevant language. Here in Texas, it's going to be Spanish. If you're in another locale, it might be Vietnamese or you know, or some other language. But I actually minored in a language at TCU. I minored in Japanese, and I loved it, and I thought it was fascinating, and I don't really regret doing it. But it's the kind of thing where if you don't immerse yourself in it, you'll lose it. And so now I speak Japanese on the level of probably about a 3-year-old. If I had focused on Spanish, a language that I could actually have used, I would have been a much better advocate, and I would have, you know, frankly, I would have made a lot more money, because I would have gotten cases that I otherwise would have to turf out to people who are native Spanish speakers. So, and then one final thing, and this may sound weird because you guys are super motivated, and you're in high school and you're about to go to college, or you're in college and you're about to go to law school. And all I would say about that is there is something to be said for gaining some life/work experience out of academia, because almost anything you do is going to be relevant to a law practice. And, you know, for example, when I would interact with DAs, I always felt a lot better, and I think judges felt a lot better about people who had a little bit more wisdom in determining what someone quote unquote deserves, let's say, as a defendant, if they'd done other things than just gone from high school to college to law school to the DA's office. So I say all that to kind of say, don't feel bad if you're like, you know what, I want to take a year or so and do something else, or I want to take 2 years and go do this job. I myself, I work for Child Protective Services after college. I deferred law school for a year because it was important to me for a lot of reasons to do that job. And I think that I was a better advocate for having had that experience. So I guess what that would boil down to is if there's something inside you that's saying maybe I shouldn't rush, then maybe you shouldn't rush.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I thought those were all incredible pieces of advice, and I hope you guys are writing all of this down. Seek out leadership opportunities, learn other languages, be creative with the information that you're getting and taking in, and keeping an open mind. I'm loving all this. I'm like I'm in law school or undergrad trying to write this down myself. I love these pieces of advice, and you can use this at any stage of your life, especially about foreign languages and pursuing foreign languages. It's harder as you get older, but you can certainly continue to do that. So a question: are there many women or minorities in the fields that you all currently occupy? And if you are, if a person is a woman or minority, what advice would you give them for breaking the glass ceiling in the legal professions that you're in?
Who do you want to start?
Shaking it up. We haven't had Colonel Holcombe start, so we'll have you start this one.
Yes, absolutely. The Air Force, and I believe all branches of the military have, in the JAG Corps, have great numbers of women and minorities. It's been a while since I've seen statistics, but I know at one point in time, the number of women JAGs in the Air Force was close to 40 or just over 40%. So I imagine that those numbers are probably at least that level or maybe higher. So the military branches will provide awesome opportunities for women and other minorities. So I think you will be surprised if you were to look at the statistical numbers at how many different minorities are represented within the JAG Corps. So definitely yes. I never experienced any limitations by being a woman in the JAG Corps. I think the military does a good job, at least in my experience in the Air Force, the military does a good job of not really caring whether you're a man or a woman or if you're a minority. I think the military has done a great job in leveling the playing field for all people. Again, that's my experience. I'm sure other people probably have had some different experiences, but in my experience and in my memory of statistics within the Air Force JAG Corps, minorities and women have great opportunities to be accepted into the JAG Corps and then to excel and get promoted and attain rank and all of those things and do very well as Air Force JAGs and our enlisted corps as paralegals.
Excellent. Steve, what are your thoughts?
It's a difficult question to answer simply because
it's so nuanced.
It depends on how you look at the industry, right? At the fundamentals, video game, esports, it is an entertainment venue. From the competitive side, it does skew pretty significantly male. However, from a team standpoint, for every 5-10 players you've got that are participating in a tournament, you've got another 30 to 50 sort of back of house that are managing sponsorships or managing players or coaching or doing all those other things. I can say as a general rule, yes, absolutely. It skews significantly male, and we could use a lot more diversity, certainly with the development of the titles themselves. So, in certain leagues, the publisher has a lot to say about how the tournaments are run, how the league is run. The programming is highly male. As far as geographic and ethnic diversity, we're going to pull from all over the world, frankly. So I think we are generally pretty good on that. But as far as opportunities for women, there are opportunities. There are roadblocks as well. One of the things that we as an organization or an industry are trying to work on is that inclusivity and ensuring that gaming, generally speaking, is a much better and more inclusive place. We've got a lot of ground we need to cover. Just point blank, it is a challenging environment, and we need to work on that. That being said, one of the ways we're going to make that change is people of your generation, high school, college, getting into law school, entering into that field. We need help from the inside. And so we need, individuals on the inside to help us. So please, I would hope very, very strongly that the current demographics are not going to be a discouraging factor. Look at the demographics and say, it's not where it wants to be. So please help us change it. Don't just use that as a barrier to say, this is not something I'm interested in. And I would be remiss without saying, if you are ever in that industry or in a situation where you're not getting that sort of treatment that you expect or you desire, there are hundreds of resources. So please talk to someone, tell someone. Don't let it drive you from something that you are passionate about. Please let us fix it. Don't just chalk it up to something that is endemic to the industry. Give us an opportunity. Call someone like myself or an HR person. We need you here. Please come. I beg you. That's the only way we're going to make it better.
I am in love with that response, you all. The really take ownership of and be empowered by the fact that the industry can only change if you push past what is currently there and try and stake a claim in it yourself. I love that. Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask Justice Browning and Mr. Bouffard to roll this next question into the previous question, which is about diversity and inclusion, which is kind of along the lines of what we were discussing prior to the panel. But what are some things that your organizations are doing to be more inclusive about hiring persons of color? And if you are not part of those decisions, feel free to give your thoughts on diversity and inclusion generally for this industry.
Thank you, Amber. There probably, especially at this time in our national discussion or national reckoning on racial relations, there's probably not a topic as important as diversity and inclusiveness and equity. And I'm proud to say that my firm has been very active. We have a entire separate diversity and inclusiveness committee that's very active. It's something that's been important to me that I've written about. I've tried to mentor young lawyers, both female attorneys who are maybe not seeing the opportunities that we're now seeing today, thankfully, as well as attorneys of color. And it is incredibly important because we have so far to go. And part of it involves, number one, acknowledgement of the problem, and two, doing more than just lip service, doing more than just talking about it or, funding scholarships or setting up a committee. It involves going out and actively seeking out and improving the pipeline, improving the entry into the profession itself. These sort of efforts make a big difference. One of the things that I've done, the Dallas Bar Association offers opportunities for lawyers. It's called the Lawyers in the Community program, where you can actually go into the schools and talk at a much earlier juncture about what attorneys do, how important they are for society, and encouraging young men and women of color that of the opportunities that are available. I've also seen, in the technology field, there's been a problem with that sector being, too non-diverse, but efforts are increasing. Awareness of it is very much increased. And, again, I think if you're in law school and you're looking at law firms, look to see what they're doing. Look to see if they are just walking the walk or talking the talk, or are they in fact walking the walk? And I'm proud of what my firm has done, and I think these sort of initiatives are critical because I want to practice in a firm that mirrors what society looks like.
For my part, I 100% echo Colonel Holcomb's experience. So I was Navy, but I did my entire active duty with the Marines, so I have kind of a quasi mixed experience there. But I'm not going to pretend for a moment that I can put myself in the place of, as a white guy, I put myself in the place of a minority. But I can honestly say, from my perspective, just as Colonel Holcombe said, I mean, it was almost irrelevant. I mean, certainly in terms of hiring, I believe in the military services, and the attitude was, and I have a pretty good ear for BS, and I wanted to kind of think this was BS, but it turned out really to be true. And the attitude was, we're all green, on the Marine side, and I have to give them due credit. They backed that talk up. After my 5 years of active duty, I was faced with the decision to leave or to stay in. And I chose to leave. One of the reasons why I chose to leave is because I'd gone to this law school where a lot of my peers were out at these, big firms in New York and DC and making all this money. And I'm like, well, I want some of that. So I went to work for a civil law firm in Dallas. And I lasted about 2 years. I hated it for a whole host of reasons, but I will say in my entire legal career, which is now going on 23, 24 years, that was the most monochromatic place I've ever been. I can't fault them for their gender diversity. There were plenty of women attorneys there, but it was a very white place. And I don't know how much that contributed to my sort of negative attitude about it, but I would have to say it probably did on some level. I get out, I go to work for the DA's office for a little while in Tarrant County. And then of course I go out on my own, and I'm thinking about the Tarrant County Criminal Defense Bar. It's incredibly diverse. It's incredibly supportive. And now I'm back with the Department of Defense, and I lead a team of 8 people that I inherited. I haven't hired anybody yet, but half my team is female and half my team is minority. So I think that, if you're competing for a federal job, whether it's military or civilian, I really don't think that gender and ethnic diversity is really a problem. I see it more in the private sector. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely. And I thank you all for your thoughts on this very, very important issue. So we are about at the end of this panel. I wanted to give you guys one final opportunity to give any last words of encouragement or just a general rallying cry for anybody that is looking to consider practicing. And this includes if you have internship advice or how to seek out experience. Please share that with the group as your concluding thoughts. And we'll start with ladies first, Colonel Holcombe, and then we'll go around. I don't know if your screens look like mine, but we'll Colonel Holcombe, and Mr. Bouffard, Justice Browning, and we'll end with Mr. Walkowiak.
Well, again, Amber, thank you so much for including me in this panel. It's been great to meet the other distinguished panelists and just to hear what they have to say. I've learned a great deal myself today as well. Just as you're pursuing your degrees, whether college or law school, just remember that everything is not centered on your academic career. Be a well-rounded person. Get out, participate. If you go to church or you're involved in religious activities, do that. If you want to start a scouting organization or a nonprofit or some other thing, get out and be active in your community, whether that's your homeowners association, whether it's your apartment complex, if you're living in a dorm and can be on dorm management or help with that. Get out, be a well-rounded person. Don't just have your nose in the book the whole time, because those other experiences, as our panel members have said, will help you as you go through life and as you look to see what you want to do. You don't want to be just single focused, but be well-rounded. Find the things that you love to do, find your passion, and live out your passion both in your personal life and in your career. And I think if you do that, you'll be well on your way to being successful in your career, no matter what you do and what area of law you practice.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I could not agree more. The only thing I would add to that, just from my experience, is you will find a lot of pressure in law school, and even when you get out of law school, to abandon some of the motivation that you're probably feeling right now as you consider this career that you're going to, hopefully jump into and be awesome at. You're probably full of a lot of idealism. And the simple truth is that as a lawyer, you can do a ton of good for people who really need you to do a ton of good for them. And so my advice generally would be do everything you can not to lose that idealism that you have. There are problems that need to be solved, and a law degree is oftentimes a really good thing to have when you're going to solve them. But don't lose it. Don't let them get you down. Keep that's who you are. You know yourself. Don't let anybody else tell you who you are. You decide who you are.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Justice Browning.
My words of advice, and I echo what my fellow panelists have said, are a little different and very simple. Be nice to everybody. It doesn't matter, where you are in your journey, whether you're in high school, whether you're a student, whether you're a law student, be nice to everybody. I was the hiring partner at more than one firm and the managing partner of a firm. And I remember vividly an experience where I had a succession of incredibly talented, gifted law students who were coming in to be interviewed for a summer associate position that would hopefully lead to a full-time job offer. And these were students with impeccable credentials from a variety of, they've done very well in law school and so forth. And one individual who arrived, and I'm sure, had very impressive academic credentials, was just as rude as could be to our receptionist and one of the secretaries, putting on airs and just being rude. And that got back to me, and I informed, this person, thanks, but I don't think we'll be wanting to pursue this further. There was another person I was interviewing that same day, much more humble, probably not as good on the GPA performance, but I noticed that he seemed to be, very good with everyone, from support staff on up to the attorneys. And, we have in many firms kind of a no jerk rule. You've got to work with people. And when you get out and you're actually practicing, you're going to be interacting with clients, prospective clients, opposing counsel, and judges. And believe me, word gets around. So be nice to everyone. I remember I got some award, very nice, the details don't matter. But when the people who were presenting the award told me about the vetting process, they said, John, some of the nicest things that were said about you came from opposing counsel in cases of yours. We're in a profession where, yes, we have to disagree. We have to advocate for our clients, but you can disagree without being disagreeable. Our politicians in this country seem to have forgotten that lesson in social discourse, but it's one that I take very seriously. At the end of the day, after we've done our respective jobs, it's important to still get along with people. And so that's my advice.
Excellent. That's excellent advice.
I certainly agree with all that. And let me just highlight one thing that I don't think has been said is that don't let one choice or one activity define you. There's plenty of opportunities where you might not do well on a course. You might not get into the school or get that job that you want. That only will define you if you let it. I just hired a 35-year-old first-year attorney who 5 years ago was selling mattresses for just above minimum wage. He worked his butt off. He earned that job. I didn't give it to him. He earned it. I would much rather hire someone who is passionate and hardworking that doesn't have the top tier credentials. That person will be a great advocate, someone I have in my corner. I don't want lazy geniuses. I don't want them. I don't care where you went. I don't care what school. I don't care who you know. If you're not willing to commit the effort and work hard, I don't want you on my team. And that's just simply a long way of saying there's going to be adversity in whatever you do. You might not get that thing that you think you want, but keep working at it, keep fighting, and you'll get there. And if you are truly passionate and you truly want that thing, whatever that thing is, it's going to come out. It's going to come out in your resume. It's going to come out in the interview. It's going to come out in the types of things you are doing to earn that position. So keep fighting and keep trying, and you will get there. I promise you that. And so thank you, Amber.
Thank you so much. I guarantee there's going to be a little sign on the outside of my door when I go back to the office that says "No room for lazy geniuses here." I'm stealing that. So sue me. Go ahead. I'm stealing that. I am so grateful. And when I say this was a VIP all-star panel, you all did not disappoint in any way. I'm so thankful to have had the guidance of each and every one of you, and these students are as well. We appreciate you so much. If you have any contact information or anything that you want the students to have, feel free to drop it in the chat. Or students, you're all always welcome to reach out to me directly if you have any questions that I can relay on to these wonderful people. But I'm so thankful for each and every one of you, and thank you for taking the time out to do this. This was magical. Absolutely. And so you all are the very last panel of the day. So we saved the best for last. I will leave the students with this final thought. Please join us for our inaugural boot camp, our advocacy boot camp. I mentioned that earlier. If you're interested in that, send an email to prelaw@uta.edu. But otherwise, we thank you, the students, for joining us. We thank you, panelists. And it's been a pleasure of a day. Thank you so much, all. Take care and have a wonderful, blessed weekend. Be safe. No more snowpocalypses for us.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful.
Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.